Chapter 548. The law enforcement disciple who had been knocked out came early in the morning as usual. He was the one who transferred Shangguan Zhaorong to deliver breakfast. When he saw Zhang Xiu, the first thing he asked was, "I heard that you want to escape?" Zhang Xiu said, "If I really wanted to escape, you wouldn't have seen me here." He said, "You think you can escape? Although I've been knocked out, once an outsider invades the law enforcement hall and casts a spell, the law enforcement elder will know. You can't escape at all." Of course, Zhang Xiu knew this. There was a large array outside the law enforcement hall. Zhang Xiu just smiled. Although the law enforcement hall was an inescapable net, the one who came last night was a celestial king. His strength was enough to rescue Zhang Xiu before the law enforcement hall's elders arrived. Zhang Xiu said, "I don't need to escape. You keep dreaming." It seemed that he was a little embarrassed after being knocked out last night. He blamed it on Zhang Xiu, thinking that it was his friend who hit him. In the end, more than 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Zhang Xiu stayed in the law enforcement hall's prison. He didn't know the situation outside, but he thought that he must be very nervous. If it was calm, it was the calm before the storm. On this day, law enforcement elder Xia Shun suddenly came. He asked Zhang Xiu, "Do you want to go to the swordsmanship hall or the law enforcement hall?" Zhang Xiu said, "Are you going to let me out?" Xia Shun said, "It might not be a good thing to go out, but if you're locked up here, it will slow down your cultivation progress. We've discussed with the sect master. Your mistake is not serious. You've been here for so long, and the punishment is enough. But you have to choose your own path after going out." The Swordsmanquist Hall was for swordsmanship. It couldn't be helped. Most of the people in the Celestial Motion sect were sword cultivators. It was also the core of the Celestial Motion sect. As for the Law Enforcement Hall, it was in charge of the laws of the Celestial Motion sect. It had a lot of power, but it also had a lot of restrictions. Actually, what Zhang Xiu wanted the most was to be an unaffiliated person or go to the God Cultivator department. However, that place was extremely abandoned. Even the Peak Master of God Cultivator Peak might not be of a higher standard than Zhang Xiu's. He said, "Shouldn't I be going to Divine Cultivator Peak?" Xia Shun said, "This is also where we are troubled. Our Tianqing School's God Cultivators are not even comparable to the small sects in Divine Continent. If you go to Divine Cultivator Peak, I'm afraid you will be delayed. The resources there are also very limited." Actually, he also knew in his heart that it was the most suitable place for him. With Zhang Xiu's talent, he actually did not need that master. At most, they could give him pointers on immortal martial techniques, but they could not help him in real cultivation. However, Zhang Xiu still had to face Gu Deqian's revenge. He said, "The resources just have to be on the same level as the core disciples." Divine Cultivator Peak was also in the top 3 peaks. As long as he could go up, then he would have a chance to find the resources he had hidden. He did not have to worry about resources at all. Xia Shun said, "Don't forget, you killed Gu Qian in the successor battle." This reminder was already very overboard. It was hinting to Zhang Xiu that Gu Deqian would seek revenge on him. The sect's rules forbade life and death in the successor battle. That was an arena, just like how boxers on Earth died in a boxing match. However, people were always unable to distinguish this point. Xia Shun also did not have confidence in his sect's elders. At that time, Gu Deqian had already rushed onto the stage without a care for anything and wanted to make a move on Zhang Xiu. Facing the pursuit of an immortal king, Zhang Xiu naturally did not have much confidence. But whether it was going to the swordsmanship-seeking sect or the law enforcement hall, the location was not in the top 3 peaks. Although Zhang Xiu had someone to take care of him, he still had to think of a way to go up the top 3 peaks. If he could not go up, it would delay his cultivation. Zhang Xiu said, "Even if I go to the swordsmanship-seeking sect or the law enforcement hall, could it be that I have to follow behind the elders all day long? There will always be a time when I am alone. Sooner or later, I will have to face the medicine. Why should I shrink back?" Xia Shun said, "Since you have already made up your mind, then do as you wish." This time he was imprisoned. It took more than a month. The successor battle outside had already ended. As for who won, Jiang Xiu did not care. In any case, it was not him and there was no reward. In fact, he was very curious in his heart. How did the Ji Dao sect and the elders reach an agreement? Or did they not reach an agreement and it was just a temporary relief? Young master. Seeing that Jiang Xiu had returned, everyone in the room was so happy that they almost came out. Young master is back. Jiang Xiu said, pack your things. We are going to the upper 3 peaks. The upper 3 peaks? In every place, the location often reflected the status. In Tianqing school, the people who lived in the upper 3 peaks were the people at the top of the Tianqing school. Ordinary disciples were forbidden to go to the upper 3 peaks. The sky was higher there, and the spiritual qi was richer. Usually, the sky was almost close at hand. Originally, Shenxiu Peak could not be in the upper 3 peaks. However, when the Tianqing school was completely biased towards immortal cultivation, Shenxiu was also a big sect. Of course, it was qualified. The maids were very excited. Was the sky clear after the rain? The upper 3 peaks were the most high-class places in the sect. The spiritual cultivation peak of the upper 3 peaks did not have so many empty rooms. There were very few palaces here, and there was a large number of palace wreckage. Some of the pillars were half buried in the ground. Jiang Xiu even thought that there was such a place in the sect. Speaking of which, in his previous life, he did not pay much attention to Shenxiu Peak. He did not even remember what the peak master looked like. He saw a group of people dragging luggage and flying over. An old man and 2 young children came up from Shenxiu Peak. When they saw Jiang Xiu, they said with a smile, "We have received a notice from the inner cabinet that the new direct disciple is coming." Jiang Xiu bowed and said, "I am Jiang Xiu." Jiang Xiu? The old man's hair was white, his eyes were sunken, and there were wrinkles on his skin. He looked like an old man, but in fact, his fate wheel was not young. Hearing this, he was very surprised. "What's wrong?" The old man shook his head in a panic and said, "There used to be someone with this name. Back then, when he first entered Tianqing school, he mentioned to some of his fellow disciples that his original name was Jiang Xiu. Later, after the master gave him the order, he gradually forgot about it. This old man was old. Did he still remember? Oh, who is it?" The old man smiled and said, "People have the same name. When the previous sect master first came to the sect, his name was Jiang Xiu." Jiang Xiu's face turned unnaturally pale. This was a huge mistake on his part. He didn't think that the Sky Motion sect would use their real names to hide their identities. He didn't think that this would cause trouble for him. At this moment, the thought of killing him flashed through Jiang Xiu's mind. However, the old man did not seem to suspect anything at all. Shenxiu Peak was a little far from the core area. In addition, the system was different. It was basically at the edge of the sect and even felt a little isolated. "You are very welcome. Spiritual Cultivation Peak has not had a disciple for a long, long time. Some of them are Shenxiu itinerant cultivators who came to join us because of our Tianqing school's reputation. Their talent is also very limited. Qing Feng, Mingyue, bring your senior brother to settle down." Jiang Xiu bowed to the old man and then brought a scary person into the sect. No matter how bad Spiritual Cultivation Peak was, it was still a place of the 3 upper peaks. The residence of a successor disciple would naturally not be bad. It was 4 to 5 times bigger than the original place, and the standard was also raised by many levels. Li Chong and the maids were very excited. Jiang Xiu was still thinking about what had just happened. He called the servant over and ordered, "Just now, the old peak master said that my name is the same as the previous sect master's before he was born. Remember not to mention it carelessly. It will cause big trouble. Do you understand?" Jiang Xiu would never tell them anything. Once he spoke, they naturally understood the seriousness of the situation. After all, this was related to the previous sect master. Yes, this servant will remember. Yes, this subordinate will remember. On Shenxiu Peak, there were more than 300 people, including the servants. There were less than 100 true Shenxiu. Compared to the other peaks, it could be said to be extremely bleak. Then his gaze fell on the peak master's palace. He felt that he could not be too reckless. Many people knew that he was called Zhang Xiu back then. Although almost all of his senior and junior brothers had died to help him back then, would the Ji Daozong know? He was much older than Zhang Xiu. Although they had not interacted at that time, would he have heard about it and then set up this trap for him? Young master, spiritual tea. Zhang Xiu remembered something. Every disciple would fill in their personal information before entering the sect. Even if the Ji Daozong did not know, when he thought about flipping through Zhang Luoxia's information, he would definitely see that the name was Zhang Xiu. No, I have to go to the scripture storage peak. Chapter 549. Zhang Xiu decided that he had to destroy all the information about Zhang Luoxia. Otherwise, he would really be forced to do a blood test. At that time, it would be confirmed that he was Zhang Luoxia, and what awaited him would be death. In the immortal martial continent, all the major sects had a complete system. On Earth, technology proved that irises couldn't be replicated. Everyone was different, and in the immortal martial continent, everyone's blood was different. When Zhang Xiu entered the Qianqing school, he went through a complete procedure and had his blood collected. Later on, when he became the sect leader, his blood was even enshrined in the ancestral hall. Now, many people suspected that Zhang Xiu was Zhang Luoxia. Their identities were different, and their cultivation systems were different. It felt a little far-fetched. However, if even their names were the same, there was really no way to explain it. Once the situation escalated to the point of having to do a blood test, it would be irreversible. And his information was hidden in the scripture depository. The information from more than 3,000 years ago should be in a very old library. However, when Zhang Xiu was halfway there, he heard a commotion in the distance. Many disciples rushed forward. Then, they saw thick smoke billowing from the mountain peak in the distance. Zhang Xiu hurriedly pulled a disciple. "Senior brother, what happened?" That senior brother said anxiously, "The library of the scripture depository is on fire." Huh? Zhang Xiu was stunned. He was just about to destroy Zhang Luoxia's information when the scripture depository caught fire. This was too much of a coincidence. "Senior brother, which part of the scripture depository is on fire?" "It's those old buildings." Zhang Xiu's eyes almost popped out. Of course, his information was kept in the old buildings. At this moment, he felt that someone wanted to destroy his information too. Could it be that someone knows my identity and wants to help me? Do you want to go and put out the fire together? For immortal cultivators, putting out a fire wasn't a difficult task. They didn't need to carry buckets of water to put out the fire. Even if the fire was big, a few disciples could summon heavenly water to put it out. "I'll go first." That person hurriedly rushed over. Zhang Xiu, on the other hand, dismissed the idea. If he were to appear at the scene of the fire now, it would inevitably arouse people's suspicions and bring disaster upon himself. Since someone was willing to help, he would save himself the risk. Who could it be? Zhang Xiu was very curious and also very nervous. In his mind, he actually thought of the old god elementalist who had come to pick him up today. He knew that Zhang Luoxia's name before he transcended mortality was Zhang Xiu. Is it really him? Zhang Xiu would definitely not directly verify this matter. In fact, he would not even try to verify this matter. The human heart was unpredictable. He believed in himself more. Returning to Divine Cultivator Peak, Zhao Rongshan had already prepared lunch. Zhang Xiu had been locked up for so many days. Although he delivered food every day, it was not as steady as when Zhang Xiu was eating in front of him. Something has happened outside. I heard that the scripture storage peak is on fire. Xiaoye and Wang Xinya, the two servant girls, heard the gossip from the side. Zhang Xiu did not bat an eyelid, minding his own business as he ate his food. "Fire? Is it bad?" Zhao Rongshan asked. "I heard that the fire is very big." More than half of the scripture storage peak is on fire. It was autumn now, and the leaves were dry. When the wind blew, the fire would spread. It could not be controlled. There had once been a situation where the fire burned for more than 10 days. It was also fortunate that there were many immortal cultivators in Tianqing school. Otherwise, the fire would not have been extinguished. It's so exaggerated. Zhao Rongshan was very shocked. It's so big. Xiaoye said, it's broad daylight and there are no lights. Where did the fire come from? There's no reason at all. Therefore, some people speculate that someone deliberately set the fire. Zhang Xiu's chopsticks paused, and his expression gradually changed. He originally thought that someone was helping him, but now it seemed that the possibility of someone harming him was greater. However, Zhang Xiu's worries were groundless. The scripture storage peak's pavilion being burned did not mean that it would be linked to him. However, if it was premeditated, then it would be very troublesome. It would be very difficult for him to avoid a blood test. Perhaps the situation was not that bad. Zhang Xiu was a bit puzzled. What mistake did he make that made these people suspect that he was Zhang Luoxia? Wasn't Zhang Luoxia already dead? Why would they associate him with a dead person? At this moment, in the main hall of the third peak, the sect master of the Ji Dao sect sat on the high seat. The law-enforcing elder was standing outside. Originally, if it was just an accidental fire, this matter would not have been blown out of proportion. However, rumors were flying everywhere that someone deliberately set the fire. What was the other party trying to burn? Are you sure that someone deliberately set the fire? The law-enforcing elder nodded. Someone did it deliberately. The scripture storage peak is the most taboo. What's even stranger is that when the fire broke out, the disciples all left because they had something to do. Someone must have done it deliberately. Have you found the person? The law-enforcing elder said, not yet, but it isn't difficult to investigate. We can find the reason why the disciples left. Sect Master, please wait a moment. We should be able to find the person in less than half an hour. Ji Dao Sect's face was cold. Not long after, someone was brought back from the outer hall. It was an inner disciple. The law-enforcing elder asked, is it him? The disciple's gaze was evasive. Replying to elder, it is this person. I asked the disciples of the scripture storage peak and he was the one who led them away. This person is the inner disciple Wu Kong, the law-enforcing elder said. You set the fire. Wu Tsong wanted to refute, but he could not bring himself to say it. In the end, he could only nod. Why did you set the fire? Wu Tsong lowered his head and said regretfully, someone gave me a bottle of soul pills and said that I set the scripture storage peak on fire. I couldn't resist the temptation and did as I was told. Who was it? Wu Tsong shook his head and said, I don't know. He was masked so I couldn't see his face. Sitting above, Ji Dao sect fell into deep thought. The scripture storage peak only has information about the disciples who entered the sect. What did he want to hide? The law-enforcing elder's expression was uncertain. He thought of something, but he definitely could not say it out loud. While he was puzzled, he also felt incomparably shocked. Ji Daozong got down from his seat and walked away. The law enforcement elder and the others hurriedly followed him. Surprisingly, Ji Daozong was heading towards the scripture depository peak. At this moment, the scripture storage peak was in a mess. The air was filled with the unpleasant smell of fireworks. The pavilion had collapsed to the ground. The weather was dry and the fire had not been put out immediately. The fire had spread and it was already very good that it could be saved. Sect Master, what are you looking for? Ji Dao Sect identified the direction. Speaking of which, he had not been here for a long time. Other than registering information back then, he had also brought a few junior brothers here to register. Which scripture storage peak has the information about the disciples who entered the sect more than 3,000 years ago? Law-enforcing elder Xiaoshan's eyes widened. Sect Master, why are you asking this? You just have to answer me. If you can't answer, then find someone who knows. Law-enforcing elder pointed to the distance. It should be that one. It was the core area. Ji Dao sect walked over and looked around. If I'm not wrong, the fire should have started here. As expected. What? Ji Dao sect said, in the information of more than 3,000 years, there are not many people who are still alive. However, among the people who died, there is information about a person who has a lot to do with the current situation. Who? Law enforcing elder asked while knowing the answer. Zhang. Luo. Di. The expressions of the people around him all changed in unison. Law enforcing elder said, this subordinate doesn't quite understand what sect master means. That person's purpose in burning down the building was to burn Zhang Luoxia's information. There was also a formation in the scripture storage peak. If one took something out, they would be discovered. Therefore, burning it was the best way to confuse them. However, he had underestimated the intelligence of others. Of course, it was possible that he had done it on purpose. What is there to hide about sect master Zhang's information? Everyone is familiar with his matters. Ji Dao sect shook his head and said, there must be a secret hidden inside. Perhaps it's... Ji Dao sect spoke halfway, but his face turned pale and he could not continue. The law-enforcing elder and several other elders were waiting for him to continue. Perhaps. Ji Dao sect felt his heartbeat accelerate at this moment. A sense of fear that he had never felt before weighed down on his heart. He could not seem to say what he wanted to say next. He did not dare to believe it. Was this that pusher? Was he pretending to be mysterious? However, if he continued, it would be a bloody step. If it really reached that step, if the fake had to be exposed, could it be that he really was Zhang Luoxia? Chapter 550. No one would expose themselves unless they wanted to expose the truth. Ji Daozong's face became even paler. Was Zhang Luoxia really not dead? Was it him? Did you burn all the scrolls inside? A disciple with a dusty face came out and said, reporting to sect master, the scrolls inside were all burned. Not even a fragment was left. Ji Daozong's gaze swept over the people present. He knew that only a certain elder of the sect could do such a thing. Investigate thoroughly. Yes. Ji Daozong's eyes flashed with an ominous glint. Regardless of whether he was dead or alive, he was no longer someone you could shake. If it really was you, a mere god cultivator, what could you do? Tell Zhang Xiu to come to the main peak. With that, he shook his cloak and turned to leave. The few elders who stayed behind had uncertain expressions. Was the sect master going to cut off all means of retreat? Was he going to do a blood test? Law enforcement elder Xia Shun said, this is also good. It will prevent people from secretly dying. It will also prevent people from thinking too much. Law enforcement elder is right. Ji Daozong returned to the main peak and had people go to the ancestral hall. Only the sect masters of each generation were qualified to have a memorial tablet. The ancestral hall was filled with memorial tablets. There were more than 200 of them. It was said that the oldest sect master had been in power for more than 2,000 years. Zhang Xiu wasn't considered short, but he had been in power for more than 700 years. The shortest sect master had been in power for less than 100 years and had died at the hands of an enemy. Ji Daozong's eldest true disciple, Shan Kuan, came to Zhang Luoxia's memorial tablet. There was a small bottle hanging on the tablet. He inserted a silver needle into it and drew some blood. In the main hall of the main peak, all the elders of the Ji Dao sect were present. They were divided into 2 rows, and although there were quite a few of them, no one dared to say anything. Ji Daozong naturally didn't want to make such a big fuss. If Zhang Xiu was really Zhang Luoxia, he naturally wanted to deal with Zhang Xiu in private and kill him again. However, it wasn't easy to take the blood of the previous sect master out of the ancestral hall. The procedures were complicated and it wasn't something that Ji Daozong could decide alone. Therefore, he had no choice but to make it public. Everyone felt very strange. If Zhang Xiu was really Zhang Luoxia, the elders should have forced Ji Daozong to do the blood test. Why did he want to do it himself? What benefit did this have? No one could figure it out. However, for the Ji Daozong to be able to become the sect master of the Celestial Motion sect, he was naturally an extremely intelligent person. Perhaps he didn't want to wait until he was forced to that point and lose his dignity. If it really came to that point, his situation might get out of control. When Jiang Xiu stepped foot into the main hall, not a trace of emotion could be seen on his face. However, his eyes were filled with a sense of familiarity as he looked around. This place should have belonged to him, and so should the seat at the top of the hall. However, not only did this place not belong to him, but it might even become his burial ground. When he stepped in, everyone's eyes were fixed on him. The atmosphere in the hall suddenly became extremely tense. In the courtyard of the main peak's back hall, the flowers in the potted plant were accidentally cut. Madame Ji turned around with astonishment. What did you say? The sect master wants to test Zhang Luoxia and Jiang Xiu's blood? Yes, the sect master has gathered all the elders. They're all ready in the main hall. Madame Ji felt her heart beating wildly. She didn't know why she was afraid. It was just an instinct. Her reason told her that there was nothing to be afraid of. Jiang Xiu couldn't be Zhang Luoxia. It was impossible. Is that so? That's good too. It'll block the mouths of those who say Zhang Luoxia isn't dead. It'll prevent them from disturbing the peace of the sect. The person on the side said, I heard that it was caused by the burning of the scripture depository's library. That fire was deliberately set by someone. They deliberately burned the entry materials from 3,000 years ago, including Zhang Luoxia. Madame Ji asked, Why is that? The person hesitated for a moment before saying, This lowly one also heard that Zhang Luoxia's name before he ascended to the mortal world was Jiang Xiu. Madame Ji's body trembled. Zhang Luoxia's name before he ascended to the mortal world was Jiang Xiu? She now understood why the Ji Daoist sect had taken this step. Things had already developed to this point. If they didn't take the initiative, they might be forced into a desperate situation. Are you sure? The person nodded. Let's go to the main hall. In the main hall, the Ji Daoist sect's eyes were fixed on Jiang Xiu as he walked over step by step. His eyes twitched slightly. In his mind, the scene of him standing on the elder's seat and looking up at that insufferably arrogant expert walking to the sect master's throne appeared. He had seen this scene countless times, but today, he suddenly recalled it. Disciple Jiang Xiu greets the sect master. Jiang Xiu crossed his arms and bowed. Forget it. Jiang Xiu knew that things were bad when he heard about the fire. He didn't expect that the Ji Daoist sect would summon him to the main hall so quickly. Moreover, all the elders were present. This matter was serious. Gu Deqian's cold eyes swept over him. It was incomparably terrifying. The pain of losing his son was like a poisonous snake tormenting him every day. There wasn't a moment when he didn't want to tear Jiang Xiu to pieces. However, there was no opportunity. Jiang Xiu had been in the disciplinary hall's prison all this time. He had just come out when he was called to the main hall. I wonder why the sect master has summoned this disciple? Ji Daoist sect looked at Jiang Xiu. The man in front of him looked very similar to Zhang Luoxia. Not to mention a new disciple like him, even a senior like the disciplinary elder would feel uneasy when entering the main hall. However, he was so calm. This kind of temperament was truly impressive. You're not afraid? Ji Daoist sect didn't answer the question. Jiang Xiu smiled and said, Afraid? Why would I be afraid? You ordered people to set fire to the Scripture Depository Peak's library, right? Jiang Xiu was dumbfounded. Sect master misunderstands. I just came out of the disciplinary hall's prison and haven't sat down to warm my butt. Moreover, why would I burn the Scripture Depository Peak's library? Ji Daoist sect stood up from his seat and slowly walked down. He looked at the elders on his left and right and said, Because you wanted to hide your identity. There's information about you in the Scripture Depository Peak's library. Don't be in a hurry to explain. I believe many people remember that more than 3,600 years ago, someone entered the Qianqing school. When he entered the outer sect, he was just an ordinary person. However, he was a heaven-sent genius. His cultivation speed shocked the entire immortal martial school. Zhang Xiu's heart trembled. Ji Daoist sect finally suspected him. He had suffered because of this fire. What does this have to do with me? Ji Daoist sect looked at Zhang Xiu's innocent face, but there was a trace of fear in his eyes. He laughed heartily. It has to do with you. Of course it has to do with you. Because you are this person. Zhang. Down. Hua. The elders on the sidelines and the gate guardians on the outside of the hall were in an uproar. Although many people had heard the rumors, they were just guessing. Most people took it as a joke. How could the dignified former sect master Zhang Luoxia become the god cultivator Zhang Xiu? But now, the sect master said it himself. Zhang Xiu felt his mind shake, but his face remained calm. Sect master, you must be joking. How could I be Sect Master Zhang? I'm a god cultivator. Sect Master Zhang is an immortal. Moreover, Sect Master Zhang passed away many years ago. Ji Daoist sect said, you don't admit it. Before Zhang Luoxia entered the Qianqing school, his mortal name was Zhang Xiu. When he entered the school, his information was recorded. This is why you wanted to burn the Scripture Depository Peaks Library. Hua. The sidelines were in an uproar again. Everyone present was incomparably shocked. Zhang Xiu was Zhang Luoxia? Sect Master Zhang. Zhang Xiu said, Sect Master, there must be a misunderstanding. Perhaps people have the same name. Out of 100 million people, perhaps only a few hundred or even 1,000 people have the same name as Zhang Xiu. Indeed, people have the same name. This sect master also thinks so. But the Scripture Depository Peaks Library burned down. How do you explain this? Zhang Xiu said, Sect master, this disciple really has nothing to do with the fire. Ji Daoist sect said, it seems that you won't give up until all is said and done. It doesn't matter if you don't admit it. This sect master has already sent people to take Sect Master Zhang's essence blood. We'll test the blood. Chapter 551. At this time, Madame Ji had just arrived at the front of the hall. Hearing this, she stopped in her tracks. The hall was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Ji Daozong stretched out his hand and a disciple brought a long table forward. There was a white cloth on the table and a golden needle on the white cloth. Everything had been prepared. It was definitely not a last-minute decision. Do you dare? At this time, it was no longer a question of whether Zhang Xiu dared or not. It was no longer up to him to decide. Zhang Xiu's face was very stiff and seemed to be expressionless. However, one could imagine the stormy waves in his heart. Whether it was a god or an immortal, blood was the foundation of life. This would not change. Ji Daozong and everyone present naturally knew this. Otherwise, the blood test would have no meaning. Zhang Xiu said, mixing a disciple's blood with a sage's blood, wouldn't that be blasphemy? Once the blood test proved that Zhang Xiu was Zhang Luoxia, the consequences would be unimaginable. Sect Master Ji Daozong would want him dead. Zhang Xiu couldn't remember what had happened in the past. At that time, many people must have betrayed him. Otherwise, Ji Daozong wouldn't have been able to ascend to the position of Sect Master. Moreover, these people would have all stood against Zhang Xiu. Once his identity was confirmed, Zhang Xiu had almost no chance of surviving. Ji Daozong sneered. It seems that you're afraid? This sect master thought that you didn't know what fear was. Now it seems that you do. This sect master was wrong. Zhang Xiu's face was a bit pale. No matter how strong his heart was, he couldn't remain calm at this moment. He smiled. I don't know what sect master means. Ji Daozong said, then let's do the blood test. Come. Yes. In the Qianqing school, there was an elder and his disciples were all medical cultivators. He was also a famous godly doctor in Qingzhou. His name was Supreme Sparrow. He was a white-haired old man, but his face was bright red and he looked very feminine. However, he didn't look feminine at all. On the contrary, he was very arrogant and had a nickname, Poison Doctor. Poison Doctor Supreme Sparrow. The one who came out was a disciple of his. Medical cultivation had never been his main course. Just like formations and talismans, it was a secondary course. Tianqing School's main course was sword cultivation. Other than that, there was nothing else. The two disciples were wearing the same clean clothes and square hats. They lowered their bodies and walked in front of Jiang Xiu. They used a white towel to hold him. The other disciple was holding a needle in his hand. He was going to draw blood. A god elementalist's body couldn't be pierced by ordinary needles. Fine beads of sweat appeared on Jiang Xiu's forehead. With this needle, Jiang Xiu's life was completely over. He thought of running away directly, but it was too stupid. With so many immortal kings and great heavenly immortals present, with his current cultivation level, he probably wouldn't even be able to escape from the main hall. Opposite him, Ji Daozong stared at him with confidence. Now, he just had to wait for the results. No one thought that he would do this. Jiang Xiu was a chess piece that had a deterrent effect and even caused the sect master to panic. However, Ji Daozong was Ji Daozong after all. He dared to face the immeasurable changes that might occur. However, when things reached this point, everyone realized that everything was actually developing in a direction that was beneficial to Ji Daozong. Whether Jiang Xiu was Zhang Luoxia or not, Ji Daozong had won. He would be able to escape from Zhang Luoxia's influence. "Let me do it," Supreme Sparrow suddenly said. Hearing the elder's words, the two disciples naturally obeyed. They turned around and handed the golden needle to Supreme Sparrow. Jiang Xiu looked up. This was a very familiar person. When Jiang Xiu was still a direct disciple, he had interacted with him. Jiang Xiu loved to fight and was often injured. When he was injured, he would naturally look for Supreme Sparrow, who wasn't an elder at that time. Due to their frequent interactions and Jiang Xiu's generosity, they developed a friendship with Supreme Vermilion Bird. Although Supreme Vermilion Bird's position as an elder was decided by his master, Jiang Xiu was still a good person. The Supreme Vermilion Bird stared at Jiang Xiu's eyes. He had heard of a saying before, no matter how people changed, the look in their eyes would never change. From Jiang Xiu's eyes, the Supreme Vermilion Bird felt a sense of familiarity that he hadn't felt in a long time. At this moment, his heart skipped a beat. But then, he couldn't help but laugh in his heart. He secretly shook his head. He didn't believe that Jiang Xiu was Zhang Luoxia. Supreme Sparrow took the golden needle and roasted it above the flame. Perhaps this was his habit. When he was doing this, he only made eye contact with Jiang Xiu once when his back was facing the crowd. After that, he avoided looking at him the whole time. Then, when Supreme Sparrow came over with the golden needle, Jiang Xiu could only stretch out his hand. He said in an inaudible voice, "The blood I want to test is not Zhang Luoxia's blood. It's the blood from your eyes during the direct disciple battle." Jiang Xiu abruptly raised his head to look, but he immediately opened his mouth and let out a soft cry. The Supreme Sparrow noticed Jiang Xiu's loss of composure and pierced the golden needle into his hand, using its movements to cover its expression. On the other hand, Jiang Xiu's mood at this moment was completely different. This was a trap set by Ji Daozong. Then, it was very likely that he was the one who set the library on fire. He didn't believe that Jiang Xiu was Zhang Luoxia, but he wanted everyone to believe him. What a deep scheme. At this moment, Jiang Xiu seemed to see Ji Daozong, who was competing with him for the position of sect master. Jiang Xiu's blood was taken away. Of course, his blood was compatible with his blood test results. Although Supreme Sparrow knew that Ji Daozong was framing Jiang Xiu, he definitely wouldn't expose him or secretly change his blood. This was because once he made a move, Ji Daozong would definitely know that he was the one who did it. This matter could only be handled by him. Supreme Sparrow, as a poison doctor, naturally wouldn't do something like courting death. Jiang Xiu looked up and saw Ji Daozong's lips curl up into a proud smile. However, this smile disappeared without a trace. He opened his mouth and said, "Test." The result was already obvious. However, the atmosphere in the hall was still very tense. The elders and guards, including Madame G, who was standing outside the hall, didn't know what was going on. Zhang Xiu's mind quickly thought of a way to deal with this situation. However, the situation before him was a dead end. He, Zhang Xiu, originally had a chance of winning. However, this chance of winning was built on the premise that his strength returned to its peak. If not, then he would be a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. There was still a huge difference between a sect and an empire. An empire valued bloodline and orthodoxy. However, a sect itself was not a bloodline inheritance. It was a master and disciple inheritance. Furthermore, the position of the sect leader of the Sky Motion sect had always been occupied by the capable. Please take the sage's blood. Please take the sage's blood. Zhang Luoxia was already dead. Everyone here used to be his disciples and subordinates, so of course, they had to be very respectful. Blood was even more respectful than a memorial tablet. A medical disciple came forward to take the blood. In order to avoid suspicion, Supreme Sparrow even stood aside and didn't participate. Xia Shun, Xiao Ye, Lu Chongkong, and the others almost held their breaths. More people lost their manners and craned their necks to look inside. If this were any other time, Ji Daozong would definitely reprimand them for being rude. However, at this moment, Ji Daozong wanted them to open their eyes wide and see clearly. Cold sweat dripped down Zhang Xiu's forehead. He pretended to rub his head and wipe off the cold sweat on his forehead. His feet were facing outwards, and he was about to hide behind the door. A blood-red light rushed up. Close. The disciple shouted. It exploded, it exploded, it exploded. There was an uproar in the main hall. Everyone was stunned when the red light rushed up. Many people looked at Zhang Xiu, and their eyes almost fell out of their sockets. Sect Master? The sect master was, of course, the predecessor. You're still alive? Xia Shun, Lu Chongkong, Xiao Ye, Gu Daqian, and the others were all dumbfounded. A person who was already dead, and then they held a funeral. You even drank wine and sent him on his way. But after so many years, you saw him standing in front of you alive and well. What kind of feeling was that? Zhang Xiu knew that this wasn't the blood he left in the Qianxing school, but the blood from his eyes collected by Ji Daozong. In other words, Ji Daozong didn't believe that he was Zhang Luoxia at all. Therefore, Zhang Xiu at this moment. He suddenly widened his eyes and shouted crazily, "No, it's impossible. There must be a mistake somewhere. I'm not Zhang Luoxia." At this moment, his face was full of surprise, shock, and disbelief. Chapter 552. Everyone present was shocked. Back then, Zhang Luoxia was already dead. Otherwise, Ji Daozong wouldn't have been able to become the sect master. But what was happening now? Had he come back from the dead? The previous sect master was fine, and now the current sect master was alive. Now there were two sect masters? A woman couldn't marry two men, and it was impossible for the sect to have two sect masters. How is this possible? Madame G was also shocked. She couldn't believe it, but the truth was that Zhang Xiu's blood was compatible with Zhang Luoxia's blood. Zhang Xiu was Zhang Luoxia. He's still alive. Zhang Xiu said, "No, there must be a mistake somewhere. I'm not Zhang Luoxia, I'm Zhang Xiu." "I'm not," Ji Daozong said. "Zhang Luo, now that things have come to this, there's nothing to argue about. The truth is right in front of you. I know why you're hiding your identity because I'm the current leader of the Celestial Motion sect. You're just a tiny celestial god. Are you worried that if your true identity is exposed, you'll be suppressed by me?" Zhang Xiu didn't say anything. He just shook his head at Ji Daozong, as if he couldn't believe that he was Zhang Luoxia. Ji Daozong understood his surprise and disbelief, but he wanted to confirm it. "No, definitely not. Not only that, but I'll also return the position of sect master to you." As soon as he said this, the entire hall fell silent. Many pairs of eyes stared at the Ji Dao sect in astonishment. How many people yearned for the position of sect master? How much did the Ji Dao sect pay to obtain it? Now, it actually took the initiative to give it up. Even Jiang Xiu was surprised. Madame Ji's expression changed greatly. In order to obtain the position of sect master of the Ji Dao sect, her Tai Hua sect had paid a great price. Now, they had only reaped the fruits of their labor for 10 years. They hadn't occupied many territories, and they hadn't obtained many resources. This is also related to my Tai Hua sect. Madame Ji rushed in angrily. Just as she was about to speak, someone spoke first. I object. Everyone looked over and saw that it was Elder Tang Tianyang. He and Ji Daozong had the same master, and were true martial brothers. Their relationship could be imagined, and this Tang Tianyang had always been Ji Daozong's right-hand man. He walked out and bowed deeply. He even crossed his arms and kowtowed. Sect Master, you must not do this. Sect Master Jiang is indeed the previous sect master, but he has been away from the sect for too long. He no longer knows about the matters of Qianqing school. Moreover, the current sect master Jiang is merely a divine god. The Qianqing school sect master has always been a capable person. For the sake of the sect, please don't retreat. As soon as he said this, the elders present all fell silent. After all, Jiang Xiu's strength was still low. Everyone looked at each other. No one dared to say anything at this moment. Ji Daozong waved his hand and said, since Sect Master Jiang is back, of course he will continue to be in charge of Qianqing school. I'm just a temporary replacement. Was he serious? Everyone was a bit confused. They thought that Ji Daozong was just putting on a show, but they didn't expect him to be so enthusiastic. Suddenly, with a plop, Tang Tianyang directly knelt down and begged. He said emotionally, Sect Master, please don't. If you retire, outsiders will know that the Qianqing school sect master is only a divine god. How will they view our Qianqing school? If someone comes to visit us, how will we respond? At that time, our Qianqing school will lose face. As an elder of Qianqing school, I can't just sit by and watch the Qianqing school decline. If sect master must abdicate, then I will commit suicide in front of the hall. Ji Daozong's face showed pain. Elder Tang, why do you have to do this? I'm just a temporary replacement. Now that sect leader Jiang has returned, he should be the one in charge of the Heaven Motion sect. If I don't give up my position, people will think that I'm greedy for it and refuse to leave. This will make things difficult for me. It's very difficult. Madame Ji had been waiting outside for a long time. She couldn't hold it in anymore and rushed in. I also object. Madam. Madam. The guards in front of the hall all spoke up. I object as well. I don't know what happened to Sect Master Jiang, but it's an indisputable fact that there's no news about him. As a result, the Sky Motion sect is in a state of turmoil, with internal and external troubles. Even now, it's still in turmoil. We still need to work together with our Tai Hua sect to control the situation. If you abdicate now and let others know that Zhang Luoxia is just a little heaven immortal, the situation that we've managed to control with great difficulty will definitely be messed up again. Tang Tianyang excitedly echoed, Yes, sect master. For the sake of the sect, you must not abdicate. Several elders who were present also revealed a pondering expression. Although this show was a bit embarrassing to watch, but what these two said was also the truth. They didn't know what had happened to Zhang Luoxia's body. Although his talent was still there, but his cultivation was gone. Not to mention whether he could return to the peak. Even if he could, it would take many years. In the past, Zhang Luoxia had spent more than 2,000 years. But now, with the speed he was displaying, it would take him at least 1,000 years to reach the peak. Law Enforcement Elder Xia Shun said, I also object. I also object. Me too. One by one, the elders stood up and all of them opposed Ji Daozong's abdication. Ji Daozong was in a difficult position. He frowned and looked very painful. I understand your thoughts, and I'm very grateful for your trust, but this really makes it difficult for me. Sect Master. Tang Tianyang was so excited that he wanted to take his sword and commit suicide. The entire sect's comfort and the foundation passed down by our ancestors for hundreds of thousands of years are not as good as the sect master's face. Can't it withstand the boring gossip? Yes. Sect Master, please sacrifice your personal reputation for our Qianqing school. One by one, the elders knelt down and begged. Even the elders knelt down, so the guards present didn't dare to not kneel down. A large group of them all knelt down. Ji Daozong looked up at the ceiling with his hands behind his back and let out a long sigh. Since that's the case, then my Ji Daozong will risk the world's great injustice and continue to hold the position of Sect Master. Thank you, Sect Master. Everyone in the hall shouted in unison. When everyone knelt down, only Ji Daozong and Zhang Xiu remained standing. Ji Daozong didn't even look at him. He was just a small fry, a small character that could be easily manipulated. He turned around and walked to his seat. Then, he sat down on the supreme throne of the Sect Master. Everyone, rise. A large group of people stood up. Sect Master Zhang. Zhang Xiu hurriedly shook his head and said, "No, I'm really not." Of course, Ji Daozong knew that he wasn't, but he still said with a smile, "Sect Master Zhang really likes to joke. Although I will continue to be the Sect Master, I don't dare to be disrespectful to you. Although you can't lead Qianqing School, you are still the former Sect Master. Our Qianqing School will still treat you like the former Sect Master. With your talent, it is only a matter of time before you regain your prestige." Zhang Xiu laughed in his heart. He had spent so much effort to put on such a big show. His methods were indeed amazing. Ji Daozong was still the same Ji Daozong as before. He had all the elders present obediently. Little did he know that the fake Zhang Luoxia he thought was Zhang Luoxia was the real Zhang Luoxia. However, although this matter disgusted Zhang Xiu, it gave him some benefits in the short term. At the very least, he would have a lot more resources, which would be helpful for his cultivation. In addition, he didn't have to worry about being suspected of being Zhang Luoxia. Now, he was Zhang Luoxia. It was even uncertain whether Gu Daqian would dare to take revenge on him. However, Ji Daozong would never let him live. With such good talent and the identity of Zhang Luoxia, if Zhang Xiu was a dragon, sooner or later, the elders who weren't on his side would come over and kill him. However, Zhang Xiu was also certain that it wouldn't be in the near future. At the very least, it would have to wait until this storm gradually faded out of everyone's sight. Those elders who were originally ready to make a move now had no choice but to retreat. Ji Daozong, who was sitting at the top, held the pearl of wisdom in his hand and commanded all the people. The news spread like the wind throughout the sect. The former sect master Zhang Luoxia didn't die and had returned. Moreover, Zhang Xiu was Zhang Luoxia. Then, Zhang Xiu's heaven-defying cultivation speed was explained. In Zhang Xiu's courtyard, Li Chong, Shangguan Zhaorong, and the others were all stunned when they heard this. "Young master, is it Zhang Luoxia?" Chapter 553. When Zhang Xiu returned, there was no expression on his face. He was as cold as usual. No, he was even colder than usual. The way Shangguan Zhaorong and the others looked at Zhang Xiu changed once again. The young master was actually Zhang Luoxia, who was known as the #1 genius of the immortal martial continent in the past 3,000 years in the Qianqing school. That high and mighty figure who only existed in legends. At this moment, the young master, who was already somewhat familiar to them, became unfamiliar once again. There was always a question in their minds. Was the young master really Zhang Luoxia? The most excited person was Li Chong. He really didn't expect that when he was in the Jialan dynasty, he had even thought of leaving. If he had really left, how regretful would he have been? No wonder the young master could defeat Elder Du of the Zhang family, who was one realm higher than him, with just a few words. If it wasn't Zhang Luoxia, who could have such eyesight? Although the young master's current cultivation was not as good as before, As long as he was willing to give a few pointers, the young master would fly. Moreover, being a servant of Zhang Luoxia was 100 times more valuable. When he returned to the Jialan dynasty, even Shui Shangjing would have to be polite to him and treat him as a distinguished guest. In the following days, people came to visit Zhang Xiu one after another. Moreover, they were all former figures of the sect. Of course, they weren't at the level of sect elders, but were from the dynasties, countries, or sects that the Qianqing school belonged to. Moreover, they were all depressed after the Ji Daoist sect rose to power. Many of these people were followers of Zhang Luoxia and were abandoned by the Ji Daoist sect. When they heard that Zhang Xiu had returned, they wanted to look for him to change the current situation. Of course, Zhang Xiu didn't meet any of them. Although the outside world already believed that he was Zhang Luoxia, Zhang Xiu had made it very clear that he wasn't Zhang Luoxia. The Ji Dao sect was very clear about this. However, of course, there were also good things. As the former suzerain of Qianqing school, Ji Daozong arranged for him to stay in Zixia Hall, which was the third best place in Qianqing school. He was very engrossed in his acting. However, staying in a place with abundant spiritual qi for a long time would show its effects. Zhang Xiu knew that he didn't have much time. Moreover, of course, he wanted to act in a place with abundant spiritual qi, so he naturally refused. In addition, the Ji Dao sect had arranged more resources for Zhang Xiu than an elder would get in a month. However, Zhang Xiu wasn't polite about this and showed his greed appropriately. Compared to the benefits of the Ji Dao sect this time, this price was really not worth mentioning. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Under the effects of the Great God Sealing technique, Zhang Xiu's divine body improved rapidly. He could faintly feel that he was about to break through. This speed shocked even Zhang Xiu himself. In the past, he advanced quickly because his cultivation base was too low. But now, he had already reached the heavenly god realm, yet he could still advance at such a speed. It seemed that his divine body had some kind of potential that was different from the current one. It was displaying a shocking power, as if this body was still in its early stages. It was still in its infancy. Due to this feeling, Zhang Xiu spent even more time comprehending the laws. After reaching the heavenly god realm, he would reach the great heavenly god realm. He needed to comprehend and fuse the complete laws. The fire element was the closest. He didn't consider comprehending the laws of the world and the laws of the world. These two laws were too difficult. The reason he could comprehend them was actually a kind of transfer. He had obtained them from the longevity stone talisman and didn't cultivate them himself. Thus, he was somewhat lacking in confidence. After being stuck in his comprehension of the fire element, Zhang Xiu gave up on this and focused on comprehending the laws of wind, earth, and water. His goal wasn't to become a great heavenly god or even an immortal king. Instead, it was to cultivate the Great God Seal technique, which was the 11th of the Fortune Jade Butterfly's 3,000 Great Tao. In the main hall of the main peak, Ji Dao sect was dressed in gorgeous clothes and followed by a group of attendants. His extravagance was much greater than the emperor's. In the distance, Madame Ji saw him and went to greet him. However, she noticed that Ji Dao sect's expression wasn't very good. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" Ji Dao sect said, "Nothing." He sat down in the garden's courtyard. The weather was getting colder, and the flowers in the garden were beginning to bloom. As far as the eye could see, it was a vast expanse of white that emitted a luster, making the world seem pure and white. "Did you encounter some difficulties in your cultivation?" Ji Dao sect didn't say anything and just muttered to himself. The heavenly reflection is the 9th secret art of the immortal martial arts. It seizes the fortune of heaven and earth, so it's not that easy to cultivate. Madame Ji said carefully. The heavenly reflection was a treasure that even the Tai Hua sect coveted. It was only passed down to the sect master of the Qianqing school. Ji Dao sect let out a long sigh. Madame Ji knew that she was right. Be patient and take it slow. She also wanted to say that she could give him some advice if he had any problems with his cultivation. However, this was a taboo topic for her. Ji Dao sect hated it when she asked about the heavenly reflection. After all, It's a secret art that can help one break through to the immortal emperor realm. If it were easy, then the legendary founder of the Qianqing school wouldn't be the only immortal emperor realm cultivator. Ji Dao sect was still unhappy. He wanted to cultivate to the immortal emperor realm. Otherwise, he would never be able to break free from the Tai Hua sect. However, this kind of thing couldn't be rushed. There must be a problem, there must be. Ji Dao sect was very depressed. He had always been conceited. Back then, when he lost to Zhang Xiu, he couldn't accept it. Now, he was wasting his time on the heavenly reflection. Ah, that's right. Madame Ji suddenly thought of something. Although Zhang Luoxia's cultivation is gone, his thoughts are still there. His research on the heavenly reflection is older than yours. Why don't you go find him and discuss it with him? After all, he's known as the #1 genius of the immortal martial continent in the past 3,000 years. Ji Dao sect said disdainfully. The #1 genius of the immortal martial continent in the past 3,000 years? Humph. His cultivation speed is only fast. In terms of talent, he's only average. He doesn't have much creativity. That was the fake Zhang Luoxia. How could he know what the heavenly reflection was? Wasn't it a waste of time to find him? Madame Ji said, that's the same. Back then, Zhang Luoxia learned things very quickly. However, he didn't create a world-shaking immortal martial continent. Compared to his competitors, he's lacking in this aspect. After Ji Dao sect finished criticizing Zhang Xiu, he still frowned. I feel that my cultivation isn't going smoothly. I don't know why. Madame Ji said, could it be that your luck isn't good? Ji Dao sect said, I have this feeling. Then why don't we find a great master of geomancy to help me look at my fortune? Qianqing school didn't have anything like geomancy. Some of the disciples only knew a little about it. In order to enter the immortal king realm, one must first face the mysteries of the heavens. Ordinary people didn't have this kind of ability. Thus, they could only ask outside. All right. Make the arrangements as soon as possible. Madame Ji said, speaking of which, it's a coincidence that immortal Ling Xiu from Song province is in Qing province. Why don't we invite him? However, it's not easy to invite him. Ji Dao sect frowned. Could it be that he doesn't even dare to give face to Qianqing school? Madame Ji laughed. Look at how anxious you are. How could he not give face to Qianqing school? I'll personally invite him for you. However, he's... Anyway, when the time comes, don't put on airs as the sect master. Lingshu Mountain is one of the top sects in Song province. All of their disciples are extremely intelligent and mysterious. I heard that they usually don't leave the sect. Why would he come out? Madame Ji shook her head. I'm not sure. Is he going to Tai Hua sect? I really can't hide anything from you. Lingshu is indeed in Tai Hua sect. Marriages between sects were very different from marriages between mortal dynasties. Usually, after a woman married a man, she would think for the man. After all, he would have children. The woman would also think for her children. Slowly, she would be biased towards her husband's family. However, sects were different. It was difficult for them to have children. All the sects were the same. They didn't pass down their bloodline. Instead, they passed down their inheritance through master and disciple. Therefore, even though Madame Ji married Ji Daozong and the two of them seemed to have a good relationship, there was still some distance between them. They couldn't be like a normal couple. Madame Ji's heart was still with Tai Hua sect. The Ji Daozong didn't ask why a wise person like Ling Su was going to the Tai Hua sect. He had his own status. In addition, the Tai Hua sect was like a dark cloud above his head. It was a taboo and he couldn't ask too much. Just like how he didn't like Madame Ji asking about Qianqing, Madame Ji didn't like him asking about Tai Hua sect. Chapter 554. A few days later, news came from outside the sect that an important figure had arrived. It was a wise man. Although he wasn't at the Celestial King realm, his reputation wasn't any weaker than one. He was a celestial master, and his name was Lingshu. In the immortal martial continent, when many special professions cultivated to the peak, their status was even more respected than celestial kings. Although there weren't many celestial kings, there were still more than one or two. As for celestial masters, alchemists, formation masters, and doctors, there were very few who stood at the peak. Usually, everyone had something to ask of them. Over time, everyone held them in high regard. After Zhang Xiu reached the Celestial King realm, although his other skills weren't bad, they could only be considered to be involved. There was still a long way to go before they specialized in cultivation. When this celestial master arrived, the sect master, Ji Daozong, personally welcomed him. Zhang Xiu knew that they had something to ask of him. He couldn't help but feel strange. What did Qianqing School need from this celestial master? Zhang Luoxia's explosion had already been fused by the Ji Dao sect, so he could sit back and relax. The other elders also didn't dare to make a ruckus because of this matter, so his days should be very comfortable. Is it because of the matter of obeying the power? Recently, Zhang Xiu also heard some things. Qianqing School's control over the power below was not as good as before. Some of the power had already leaned towards other directions, and some had disobedient thoughts. The final reason was that Ji Daozong increased the taxes on the power below. It had always been the officials who forced the people to rebel, and within the sect, they also reduced the resources of the disciples. They concentrated a large portion of the benefits on themselves. Of course, this would cause dissatisfaction, but Ji Daozong was the sect master and had the support of Tai Hua sect. Everyone was angry but didn't dare to say anything. The incident with Zhang Luoxia a while ago probably had a lot to do with this. I heard that many people below are dissatisfied. Could it be that the sect master wants to find an earth master to change his luck? Xiao Yu, who liked to gossip, said. There weren't many people at Shenxiu Peak. Ever since news of Zhang Xiu being Zhang Luoxia spread, everyone quickly came over to get familiar with Grand Sect Master's maidservant. Therefore, Xiaoye quickly found out about any gossip. Is changing luck useful? Shangguan Zhao Rong shook her head. This is human nature, it has nothing to do with luck. After all, Shangguan Zhao Rong was born in an official's family. Her knowledge was not something an ordinary servant girl could compare to. Do you know how to put on an act for others? Shangguan Zhaorong still shook her head. Although there are some forces below who are dissatisfied with Qianqing School has the power of the 13 immortal kings and has ruled for hundreds of thousands of years. So what if they're dissatisfied? Schoolmaster Ji's position is very stable. No one can shake it. The head of Qianqing School had absolute power over the life and death of his subordinates. This was like a powerful country controlling a small country. He could do whatever he wanted. If these forces left Qianqing School, their destruction would be imminent. No matter how much Qianqing School exploited them, they would always be able to survive. I heard that schoolmaster wants to have his fortune told and his future. Wang Xinya brought the ingredients back from the sect. 2 disciples helped her carry them back. Fortune told. Xiaoye pursed her lips. Does schoolmaster's life even need to be told? He's a supreme master, an overlord of a region. He's indescribably noble. Humph, all of this should have been young masters. Shangguan Zhao Rong said nervously, Sure, don't talk nonsense. It'll be troublesome if others hear it. Young master doesn't want to hear this either. Xiaoye hurriedly covered her mouth. She knew that she had said it. Every family has its own difficulties. Schoolmaster is the same. Outside, it said that schoolmaster wants to break through to the immortal emperor realm, but his cultivation isn't going smoothly. Therefore, he invited a heavenly master to change his luck and have his fortune told. People were all like this. When their own abilities weren't up to par, they would always place their hopes on illusory things. Zhang Xiu was drinking tea in his room. He heard the conversation outside clearly. He thought that the news Wang Xinya heard was the closest to the truth. The Ji Dao sect was actually in a difficult situation. They were suppressed by the Tai Hua sect, and the elders below were unconvinced. The only way to break through this shackle was to take a step forward in cultivation and become the one and only immortal emperor. Then, they would all bow their heads and ascend to the top of the Qing province. However, the immortal emperor realm was extremely difficult. Ordinary people didn't have emperor-level cultivation methods. According to the legends, the heavenly mirror was an emperor-level cultivation method. It was ranked 9th in the immortal martial arts. The founder of the Qianqing school was an immortal emperor, but that was the complete heavenly mirror. The one that was passed down today was incomplete, and what was missing was the most important part. Zhang Xiu also had the idea of breaking through to the immortal emperor realm after succeeding the position of schoolmaster. At that time, he was full of confidence and thought that there was no immortal martial arts that he couldn't cultivate. However, after more than 600 years, until the accident, he still hadn't succeeded. In fact, when he reached the middle stage, he almost felt hopeless. The Ji Dao sect's talent wasn't as good as his. Zhang Xiu was confident that if he couldn't do it, the Ji Dao sect wouldn't be able to do it. Looking for a heavenly master to have his fortune told was simply a desperate situation. He had never heard of anyone looking for a fortune teller when they couldn't break through. It was simply ridiculous. However, people were like this. When they couldn't do it themselves, they would always look for external forces to help them. Ling Shu had a feathered crown on his head and was dressed in a long robe. His temperament was elegant and ethereal. Accompanied by Ji Dao sect, he flew across the various mountains of the Qianqing school. Accompanying him were Madame Ji and a few elders. Ling Shu held a dragon cauldron made of an unknown material. It was pitch black inside the cauldron, but there was something moving inside. This was the technique of a heavenly master. It was closely connected to the land, observing the flow of qi and the formation of heavenly fate. He kept shaking his head. Seeing him shake his head, Ji Dao sect's heart sank. He said anxiously, "Immortal, how is my Qianqing mountain range?" Ling Shu said, "It's very bad. Look at the two openings in the southwest and southeast. The qi can't be sealed and can't hide the fortune. The trigger is the reduction of the water. Wasn't there more water in the past than there is now?" Ji Dao sect nodded. Hearing Ling Shu's words, he seemed to remember that there was more water in the past. When he was young, he would go there to play. There was a pond below where he could catch fish. The feng shui of every place changes. When it reaches its peak, it will decline. When it declines, it will rise again. This cycle repeats. The Qianqing school has been at the top of Qingzhou for hundreds of thousands of years. Since the founding of the school, it was at the peak. After that, it slowly went downhill. Ji Dao sect said, "Immortal, do you mean that our Qianqing school is at the bottom of the valley?" Ling Shu shook his head and said, "Far from it. Although the Qianqing school is not as glorious as before, it still stands at the top of Qingzhou. Sect Master Ji should know that the Qingyue sect is only a small sect now. It is bullied and has a hard time surviving. In the past, it was no worse than the Qianqing school. That was the bottom of the valley." Ji Dao sect said, "Immortal, do you think the Qianqing school will reach that stage?" Ling Shu bowed to Ji Dao sect and said, "Sect Master, please don't blame me. I also have something to say. Everything will be destroyed in the end. It is only a matter of time. The Qianqing school will not exist in this world in the end." Although the words were unpleasant and Ji Dao sect was unwilling to listen, he had to admit that Ling Shu was speaking the truth. Any human action would only slow down the process of decline. But to Ji Dao sect, this was what they were fighting for. Ji Dao sect said, "Immortal, please enlighten me." Ling Shu said, "The heavenly water is already running out. Once the water in a mountain range starts to decrease, it means that the mountain range is declining. This is irreversible. Sooner or later, the water here will completely dry up. At that time, the Qianqing school will probably have been destroyed. Therefore, if Ji Dao sect wants to revive the sect, it is impossible here. The only way is to move the sect." "What?" The elders beside him all cried out. Ji Dao sect also widened his eyes. Move the sect? This was a huge matter. The Qianqing school had been rooted in the Qianqing mountain range for hundreds of thousands of years. It left behind countless traces of its ancestors and hid countless secrets. Many disciples could find their own opportunities in this mountain range. Once it was moved, its history, foundation, and everything else might no longer exist. Yes, move the sect. Ling Xiu said, Sect Master didn't ask me if you have a chance to become an immortal emperor. Yes, Sect Master has the signs of an immortal emperor. But being trapped in this place, it is definitely impossible. Sect Master was wondering if there was a second person who could become an immortal emperor other than your sect's founder. If Sect Master wants to become an immortal emperor, the fate here is not enough to support it. If we don't move the sect, everything will be an illusion, a beautiful dream. Chapter 555. Move the School. Hearing this news, Elder Xia Xuan's teacup hung in the air. He looked up in shock. Are you serious? That heavenly master really said that? He stood up uncontrollably. What about the schoolmaster? What's his attitude? The man standing opposite him said, I'm not sure, but it seems that the schoolmaster is quite moved. Ling Xiu said that the luck of the Qianqing mountain range is constantly declining. If we don't move, it will only get worse. Ling Xiu was the most famous heavenly master in the immortal martial continent. It was said that this person had never seen wrong, nor had he ever said anything wrong. Not only that, the elders of the Celestial Motion sect could also feel that the Celestial Motion sect was going downhill, their reputation was constantly falling. Even though there was Zhang Luoxia back then, Zhang Luoxia's reputation was too great. Everyone only knew about Zhang Luoxia and didn't pay attention to the fact that Zhang Luoxia was a disciple of the Qianqing school. In other words, Zhang Luoxia's reputation was greater than that of the Qianqing school. It could be said that in many places on the immortal martial continent, everyone only knew about Zhang Luoxia and didn't know about the Qianqing school. And after Zhang Luoxia's death, the turmoil, the succession of the Ji Daozong, and now, the decline of the Qianqing school was the most obvious. Elder, could it be that the luck of the mountain range is declining? Although Elder Xia didn't want to admit it, there was indeed such a possibility. However, he would never admit it. He frowned. The Qianqing school had been here for hundreds of thousands of years and was deeply rooted. This was their country, their home. In the immortal martial continent, this concept was still very strong. Fallen leaves had to return to their roots. No matter what they experienced outside, they wanted to come back before they died. They wanted to return to their own school, the school that taught and nurtured them. Didn't Zhong Xiu think so too? With his talent, coupled with the great god sealing technique and the minor fate technique, he could completely start a new world. There was no need to take such a risk. However, he was still attached to the Qianqing school because they were old friends and his past here. He couldn't give up. Move the school. This was simply unimaginable. The sound of hurried footsteps came from outside. A man hurriedly walked in and said, Disciplinary elder, have you heard? Sect master wants to move the sect. Xia Shun's expression changed. Just a moment ago, Ling Su had only suggested that the Ji Dao sect move. How did it turn into moving the sect in such a short time? If it's just Ling Xiu's suggestion, the suzerain may not be moved. Moving the school is a matter of great importance, and it can't be decided so rashly. The suzerain's ancestors were all disciples of our Qianqing school. His ancestors are buried on the Mountain of Immortals, as well as palaces all over the mountain. There are many magnificent buildings, arrays at the foot of the mountain, and treasures left behind by immortals. It's not something that can be moved just like that. The more Xia Shun spoke, the more excited she became. The elder on the other side said, if it were any other sect head, they wouldn't accept it. But sect head Ji, the possibility of him accepting it is very high. Discipline elder, don't forget that he is the son-in-law of the Tai Hua sect. These words had a deep meaning. The suzerain will never be willing to be ordinary. Compared to sect head Jiang, there is a gap in talent and courage, but his unwillingness to admit defeat is no worse than sect head Zhang's. In the past, we always thought that sect head Zhang won, but now the one sitting on top is him, the Ji Dao sect. Xia Shun's lips moved slightly. She wanted to say something, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Sect head Jiang is boundlessly arrogant and doesn't care about anything. He is so arrogant that it makes people's hair stand on end. He disdains to associate with others, let alone collude with villains. But sect head Ji is completely unscrupulous in order to achieve his goal. Xia Shun's expression gradually turned ugly. In order to ascend to the suzerain's throne, he was willing to marry a female disciple of the Tai Hua sect. What else would he not dare to do? This was a person who could give up the interests of the entire sect for his own sake. What about the others? After sect head Zhang's matter was exposed, some people all quieted down, fearing that the Ji Dao sect would settle accounts with them later. I guess they will only watch from the sidelines and be opportunists. Xia Shun picked up the teacup on the long table again and walked to the edge of the cliff, looking at the skyline mountain range under the misty clouds. They lived on the third peak, so they could see everything below. How has sect head Jiang been recently? The elder behind him said. He has been living in seclusion. No, it should be said that he has shut himself in and doesn't want to see anyone. Some of the forces outside the sect that were once supported by him came to visit, but they were all rejected by him. No one was an exception. Xia Shun said, "Do you think it's possible for sect head Jiang to become an immortal emperor?" It's hard to say. In fact, many people rejected this answer. Zhang Xiu had been the head of the Qianqing school for more than 600 years. In other words, Zhang Xiu had cultivated the skyline mirror for more than 600 years and still hadn't succeeded. How could he have made such a big breakthrough in just a few decades? Xia Shun said, "Do you think sect head Ji can do something that sect head Jiang couldn't do for more than 700 years? It's hard to say. Of course, it was also impossible." Xia Shun knew that the Ji Dao sect head was anxious because he couldn't make sense of it at all, or because the effects of cultivating the skyline mirror were not good. Of course, no one knew what kind of existence the skyline mirror was, but one could infer the progress from people's reactions. It's useless for us onlookers to see clearly. The sect head is the one involved. We can't understand the sect head's obsession with this matter at all. Once a person's greed tears a hole, it's hard to close it again. The next day, Zhang Xiu was cultivating when someone came to the courtyard. Shangguan Zhaorong and Li Chang had the confidence to reject anyone who came, but they didn't dare to do so when this person came. The person who came was the Ji Dao sect head's disciple, Shan Kuan. The group hurriedly saluted, and Shan Kuan said proudly, "Sect head's words are to invite sect head Grand Sect Head to the main peak's main hall for a discussion." When Zhang Xiu appeared in the main hall, the hall was filled with people. The sect head, elders, peak lords, tower lords, and the leaders of the various branches were all present. When he arrived, everyone's gaze turned to Zhang Xiu. Now, everyone was treating him as Zhang Luoxia. Only one person, the Ji Dao sect head, knew that he was a fake. He had a wise expression on his face as he said with a smile, "Sect head Zhang is here. Have a seat." The people below moved a chair and placed it below the sect head's seat. Zhang Xiu was very embarrassed, but he still followed the Ji Dao sect head's instructions and sat down on the chair. It had to be known that the disciplinary elder, Q-sword elder, these important people of the Qianqing school had to stand. They really treated him as Zhang Luoxia, but Zhang Xiu himself couldn't show that he was Zhang Luoxia. He had to put on an expression of fear and surprise. He was simply a drama queen. Everyone is here. Zhang Xiu could be said to be a very special existence. In fact, it was quite embarrassing. No matter how strong and aloof he was in the past, a fallen phoenix was inferior to a chicken. In everyone's eyes, he was just here to make up the number of people. However, the Ji Dao sect head didn't necessarily think so. Zhang Xiu was the sword in his hand. Ji Dao sect head stood up and swept his gaze across the crowd as he said, "I believe everyone has heard some things. These years, our Qianqing school has been going downhill. Our reputation is not as good as it used to be. The forces that submit to us have left us, fought against us, and repeatedly challenged the dignity of our sect. We didn't do anything, and we didn't handle things well. However, the truth is that the Qianqing school disobeyed us. Since I've taken on this great responsibility, I have to think of the sect. For this reason, I've specially invited the Spirit Void Heavenly Master from Congzhou. The Heavenly Master pointed out that our Qianqing mountain range can't store water or wind. The water will dry up and the wind will stop. The fate of this place will rapidly decline. So, Ji Dao sect head looked at the crowd and said decisively, I've decided to move the sect out of the Qianqing mountain range and to another place where wind and water gather. It will be the foundation of the sect for 1,000,000 years. Hua! Although they had already heard about it, when they really heard the news, the entire palace still exploded. Everyone whispered, and it had a great impact on their hearts. Even Jiang Xiu, who was sitting on the throne, was stunned. He couldn't believe it. The Qianqing school had been here for hundreds of thousands of years. It had gone through hundreds of sect masters, leaving behind countless memories and inheritances. The 3 words, Qianqing school, were deeply rooted in this place. Even though it was hundreds of thousands of years away from the ancestors who were born and grew up here, it was as if they could feel their existence in the unseen world. Moving away from here? Tang Tianyong stood up and said, moving away is good. Sect master is really bold. Chapter 556. Tang Tianyong was very excited, as if he had heard great news. Even his eyes were shining. Sect master, if you can complete the relocation, your contribution will be comparable to the founder of that year. I'll be the first to support you. Ji Daozong nodded satisfactorily at Tang Tianyong with a smile on his face. This flattery made Ji Daozong feel very comfortable. In fact, when he made this decision, his heart was motivated by his own interests. He wanted to become an immortal emperor at all costs. He was afraid of burying the entire Qianqing school. But from his point of view, this was also beneficial to the Qianqing school. In order to become an immortal emperor, there was nothing that couldn't be sacrificed. At that time, except for Tang Tianyong, no one else came out to support the relocation. Everyone present was against it instinctively. Apart from the powerful ones, everyone was lazy and instinctively resisted the relocation. Moreover, they didn't know whether it was good or bad. Emotionally, they couldn't accept it at all. Gradually, the main hall became very quiet. What's the matter? Ji Daozong looked at the crowd and was very dissatisfied. Why are you all silent? We were born in this turbulent era. This is our opportunity. We shouldn't be obsessed with the achievements of our ancestors. We should build on the past and create excellent conditions for our future. Ji Daozong's words were very influential. Some people present were also excited, who didn't want to make a contribution and leave their name in history. But moving the sect was really not a joke. There were too many variables. Not to mention the resources consumed, many traditions would be lost. The biggest advantage of a sect with hundreds of thousands of members compared to other sects was its heritage. But once the sect was relocated, all these would be lost. Moreover, the bigger problem was that the area ruled by the Qianqing school's subordinate forces could be considered as the territory of the Qianqing school. Once the sect moved away, how would it rule if it was too far away? They would probably lose their commander or be occupied by others. Even now, this was a huge problem. I object. A voice suddenly sounded. The one who stood out was the law enforcement elder Xia Shun. Xia Shun said, moving the sect is a matter of great importance. Once it's moved, it can be said that the foundation of our ancestors will be destroyed overnight. The 17 countries and 32 sects that belong to the Qianqing mountain range, which covers thousands of miles, will also be alienated. These were all fought for by the ancestors of the Qianqing school generation after generation. Yeah. If you move away, those people won't give up their territory and leave with you. Everyone else in the hall echoed his sentiments. Ji Daozong paced back and forth in the hall as if he was pondering. Of course, he had thought about this problem before. The area around Qing province, especially the area where the Qianqing school was located, didn't have a mountain range with excellent feng shui. If he really wanted to move, he would have to move far away. Naturally, he would have to abandon the nearby countries and sections. Indeed, this would be a great loss, but he didn't care about it no matter how great the loss was. What he wanted was to become an immortal emperor. He could sacrifice anything to become an immortal emperor. Our ancestors were able to create the conditions we have today, and we can also create better conditions for our descendants. As the saying goes, break and then build. If we want to break through the current predicament, we can only give up something. Only by giving up something can we gain something. The people present quieted down again. It could be heard that Ji Daozong was very determined to move the sect. Once we move, we will lose our subordinate forces. Our income will be cut in half, and the resources of our disciples will not be able to continue. Not to mention that their cultivation will slow down. I'm afraid that without resources, the disciples will also be alienated, Xiaoshan said worriedly. These were all realistic problems. However, Ji Daozong said, how can the disciples be alienated? The Qianqing school has given them everything. They should also do their best for the Qianqing school. I have confidence in our disciples. Zhang Xiu shook his head inwardly. In the era of information explosion on Earth, he had already seen through it. Without resources, the Qianqing school was no longer the Qianqing school. Many militarized troops had mutinied because of the lack of provisions. This was inevitable. The benefits of moving the sect could not be seen for the Qianqing school, but the disadvantages were right in front of them. It was actually very obvious what Ji Daozong's purpose was. However, his words were irrefutable, and no one could question or refute them. After all, he was the sect master. Zhang Xiu, who had mastered the minor fate technique, did not believe in luck. Although these things had an impact, the most important thing was still the people. Because the Qianqing mountain range's qi had flowed downwards, the Qianqing school had not been doing well in recent years. As a result, Ji Daozong could not become an immortal emperor. Wasn't this nonsense? In the immortal martial continent, immortal emperors only existed in legends. Zhang Xiu had never seen a living one. Could it be that the immortal martial continent's qi, feng shui, and feng shui were all useless? This was simply the most absurd thing in the world. It was ridiculous that this person actually wanted to stand on the commanding heights of the sect's future and speak with assurance. But Ji Daozong did not let Xiaoshan continue speaking. He opened his mouth and interrupted him. No buts. Then his gaze fell on Zhang Xiu. Sect Master Zhang, as the former sect master, what do you think? Zhang Xiu's eyes turned cold. Ji Daozong clearly knew that he was a fake, but he still wanted him to express his opinion. This was clearly a threat. If he sang a different tune, he would definitely be dealt with. However, Zhang Xiu would not let him use him as a sword. He said, I am no longer the sect master of the Qianqing school. It is not up to me to make decisions, so don't ask for my opinion. Ji Daozong gave a neither hard nor soft reply. Just say it. Sect Master Zhang's knowledge is not something that we can compare to. Needless to say, many people present hoped that Zhang Xiu would say something. Although Zhang Xiu's image was quite different from before, and his cultivation was gone, the feeling was still there. After all, he had led the Qianqing school for nearly 700 years. His words still had some weight. Ji Daozong had made up his mind to use Zhang Xiu as a sword. Zhang Xiu smiled coldly and said, Since Sect Master wants me to say it, then I will say it for the time being. In fact, this kind of thing is not uncommon in dynasties, countries, and small sections. However, they have a premise, and that is to move the government residents to a more central position within their sphere of influence. It is convenient to lead the surrounding areas. There is no precedent for directly moving out of the sect. The risk is too great. It is not certain whether moving the sect will be better than it is now, but it is clear at a glance that the sect will have nothing except for some people and some financial resources. If you want to restore the sect to its current size, it will be impossible to achieve it without 1,000 or 2,000 years of painstaking management. Let me ask you, How many of you here can live until then? Ji Daozong's face gradually became cold, and he looked at Zhang Xiu with a bit more coldness in his eyes. Zhang Xiu's words could be said to be the most important. People were selfish. How many people were really willing to work for others? After all, the inheritance of a sect was not the inheritance of bloodline, but the inheritance of a master and disciple. No one was willing to just be a pioneer. What's more, everyone present knew in their hearts why Ji Daozong wanted to move the sect. If the sect had benefits, of course they would not oppose it. However, if it harmed the sect's interests, it would harm their own interests. It was impossible for them to agree to move the sect. Sect Master Jiang, this is your opinion. You are too pessimistic. The appeal of Chenqing School is far greater than you can imagine. Heavenly Master Spirit Void has promised to find a dragon vein for us. He already has an idea. The sect is located on the dragon's head, and it will definitely soar into the sky. Only in such a place where spiritual energy gathers can the Chenqing School regain its glory. Ji Daozong said, "This matter is decided. After Heavenly Master Spirit Void finds the dragon vein for us, we will move the sect." Sect Master. Sect Master. Everyone in the hall was shocked. They had hesitated before, but after hearing Zhang Xiu's words, they completely understood that this matter was a great harm to the sect and themselves. Of course, they were unwilling. "I have made up my mind on this matter. You don't have to say any more." After saying that, he coldly glanced at Zhang Xiu, turned around, and left. Obviously, he didn't use this sword well. Not only did he not kill the opponent, but he also cut his own hand. In the end, he could only use such a barbaric method. It could be said that he had lifted a stone and smashed his own foot. At this moment, there was only one thought in Ji Daozong's mind, and that was to achieve his goal. As long as moving the sect could let him cultivate to the immortal emperor realm, he would not hesitate. Chapter 557. The news of the sect's relocation spread like wildfire. Everyone in Chenqing School was astonished. The matter continued to ferment, and everyone increasingly felt that something was wrong. As far as Zhang Xiu was concerned, if the sect had to move, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. At least, everyone had left, and he knew that he could go and find the resources he had hidden without any scruples. He could focus on cultivation and strive to recover his cultivation as soon as possible. It was very late at night. Taking advantage of the fact that everyone was restless, Zhang Xiu decided to go to a place to retrieve the resources he had hidden and increase the speed of his cultivation. At the height of the upper three peaks, there was a waterfall. The waterfall was connected to the land in all directions, leading directly to the earth veins. There was the chi of the netherworld spreading out, forming an undercurrent underground that was incomparably cold. Especially in winter, basically no one was willing to go near this place. In the dark night, a figure flitted past, passing through this place and going down to the undercurrent. It was really frighteningly cold inside, covered with a thick layer of frost. The wind blew on the surface, making bang-bang sounds, as if the wind was frozen. When it blew on the face, it felt like a knife was cutting. This was the land of dark ice chi condensation. Previously, Zhang Xiu had collected the true netherworld water here. That thing was obtained by Zhang Xiu from the underworld region. He had spent a lot of effort, and had only managed to snatch it after a fierce battle with 5 celestial kings. Only a little bit of the true netherworld water was needed, and the cold poison would invade the 8 extraordinary meridians. It was extremely terrifying, and could be considered one of the top 100 poisons in the immortal martial continent. Everyone's expression changed when they talked about it. It was said that it could even poison celestial kings to death. However, Zhang Xiu did not snatch the river Styx primordial water to poison anyone. Although the river Styx primordial water was highly toxic and a little bit of cold poison would invade the 8 extraordinary meridians, there was an extremely rare species of earth dragon fire snake in this world that could neutralize this poison. However, the earth dragon fire snake lived at the border of the underworld region. Specialized snake hunters might not be able to catch one even after spending 100 years. It was extremely rare. Zhang Xiu had stayed there for more than 30 years because of this. He did not catch it himself, but someone else happened to catch it and he spent a lot of money to buy it. After the cold poison entered one's body, consuming the earth dragon fire snake's blood would allow one to undergo a complete transformation. It was as if one had been reborn, and their cultivation would improve greatly. Many people who were stuck in a major realm could easily break through with this method. Be it the river Styx primordial water or the earth dragon fire serpent, they were both extremely difficult to obtain and extremely precious. Even if one was stuck at the threshold of becoming a grand celestial immortal, one could still make a breakthrough. After so many years, this damned place is still so cold. Zhang Xiu couldn't stand it anymore. His body emitted a warm light to resist the cold. Not only was this place cold, it was also mixed with a baleful aura. Whoosh! Zhang Xiu heard the sound of flowing water from afar. A monster flashed out of the river. Its face was ferocious, and its eyes were blood red. Its body was covered in scales, and its tail, which looked like a fish or a dragon's tail, was wriggling vigorously. It rushed along the river at an astonishing speed. Zhang Xiu wasn't surprised at all. This kind of baleful water monster could easily be formed in this river. Fish, snakes, all kinds of things could be formed. It was just that they came in different forms. However, Zhang Xiu didn't dare to be careless. This beast's baleful aura would cause damage to the divine body if it came into contact with it. It was like a human being exposed to nuclear radiation. He suddenly slashed out with a long saber in his hand. In an instant, the saber light was tens of thousands of feet long. The fiendish water rushed out. Zhang Xiu's saber contained the power of Yang, which was the nemesis of fiendish things. The saber light illuminated the wave that was dozens of feet high. The wave was cut open by the saber light. The fiendish water demon's waist was broken and it screamed miserably as it fell. In the next second, another one rushed out of the water. The saber light flashed again. If the baleful water monster was a snake, it might be one. However, if it was a fish, it would come in groups. Zhang Xiu was prepared for this. He slashed out a second time, and another one came out. At the same time, he flew up and flew over the underground river. Baleful water monsters kept jumping out of the water. Zhang Xiu flew all the way, one saber strike after another. Whoosh! In an instant, Zhang Xiu had flown over the surface of the underground river. The river was filled with the pungent smell of blood. How many years has it been since someone came here? Zhang Xiu still remembered the first time he came here. It took him a lot of effort to kill a baleful water monster, and he almost died here. This time, it was a piece of cake. All the way forward, Zhang Xiu frowned at an undercurrent. He still plunged into the water. One could imagine how cold the water was. If it were not for the baleful aura, the water would have been completely frozen. After Zhang Xiu entered the water, he really felt that all the pores on his body were standing straight up. He identified the direction left and right and dived all the way down. No fool would be bored enough to dive for fun. Zhang Xiu hid things under the water. Not only that, he buried them in the ground and pressed them with rocks. Passing through the group of troubled times, Zhang Xiu moved one of the rocks based on his memory. The mud on the ground surged up, but this did not affect Zhang Xiu's memory at all. It's here. He dug down. Not long after, he touched the sealed porcelain bottle. He buried 2 bottles here. One was the true netherworld water, and the other was the blood of the earth dragon fire snake. It was a coincidence. After he obtained these 2 items, he broke through his cultivation level. He felt that it would be a pity to use them, so he hid them here. He did not expect to use them today. Taking the items, Zhang Xiu did not linger in the water. He rushed out and returned to his courtyard immediately. But this night was destined to be a restless one. Just as Zhang Xiu returned home, an uninvited guest came to visit. He was dressed in night clothes. Zhang Xiu saw him throw a piece of paper into Zhang Xiu's room. He could have used funeral rites or spells, but since they came from the same school, the techniques would be easily discovered. This primitive method was actually safer. Zhang Xiu secretly admired this person's wisdom. Zhang Xiu stood outside the room and watched him leave. Then he entered the room and picked up the piece of paper. It said, "See you at dawn, Luo Yingxia." Who would want to see me? Why? Zhang Xiu did not want to go, but this person probably really thought he was Zhang Luoxia. Perhaps he could find out what happened before he went missing from him. Of course, there were risks. But if the other party really wanted to make a move, with the strength of an immortal king, he could kill him instantly. There was no need to waste so much effort and go in such a big circle. He held up a lamp and checked the 2 resources he had retrieved. Although many years had passed, the things inside would only be purer. Some things were like wine, the older they were, the more mellow they became. He did not dare to test it out rashly. He could only resist the urge to cultivate. After meditating for a while, he looked at the time and got up again. He went out again and went to Luo Yingxia. This was the earliest place in Tianqing School to see the sunrise. When Zhang Xiu arrived, there was already a person standing there. The moment before dawn was the darkest moment in the world, and the other party intentionally did not want him to see his appearance. However, from the looks of his figure, he was very familiar. He should be one of the elders. Sect Master Zhang, long time no see. Zhang Xiu said, "You're mistaken. I'm not Zhang Luoxia." He smiled. If he was in Zhang Luoxia's shoes, he would also deny it. No matter what, you will always be the sect master in my heart. I invited you here today because I want to tell you something. I also need your help. Zhang Xiu was a little helpless. Since I'm not Zhang Luoxia, I can't help you. He said, "Are you really willing to watch the Tianqing School's hundreds of thousands of years of foundation be destroyed by the Ji Dao sect? You should know that once the sect moves, the Tianqing School will be destroyed. The major forces that obey will be divided. They will not have the ability to make their own decisions. The final winner will be the Tai Hua sect." Zhang Xiu said, "So?" He said, "The Ji Dao sect is headstrong and has the Tai Hua sect behind them. They are powerless to resist. There is only one way now. Kill the king." Zhang Xiu was shocked. Only the death of the Ji Dao sect can stop the sect from moving. Zhang Xiu said, "What's the use of telling me this? We may not be able to do it with our strength. Although your cultivation is not there now, you have many celestial king friends. You can ask 1 or 2 of them for help. Only by killing the Ji Dao sect can we protect the Tianqing School." He did not turn around from beginning to end. Obviously, he also had some scruples and was worried that he would be betrayed. Chapter 558. Ji Daozong's cultivation was ranked among the top among immortal kings. Back then, only Zhang Luoxia could suppress him in the Tianqing School. Now, Ji Daozong had succeeded the sect master and cultivated the heavenly mirror. Without several immortal kings besieging him, it would be extremely difficult to kill Ji Daozong in one fell swoop. However, he didn't have enough people, so he wanted to ask Zhang Xiu to come out and find him. Zhang Xiu said, "I've said it before. I'm not Zhang Luoxia. This identity was forced on me by Ji Daozong." That person laughed out loud. "Sect Master Zhang, this isn't like you. Do you really think that Ji Daozong will let you go and let you deal with him after you recover your strength? Don't be naive. He will make a move on you soon. You disobeyed him in the hall today. If you had obeyed him and supported him, he could have lived for a while longer. However, you didn't know how to appreciate favors. If nothing unexpected happens, it should be soon." Zhang Xiu said, "I'm just a small character. You guys keep saying that I'm Zhang Luoxia, but isn't Sect Master Zhang already dead? Otherwise, how did Sect Master Ji take the position of Sect Master before the 60-year period is up?" This was the reason Zhang Xiu came to see him. "You want to know how Ji Daozong stole your position of Sect Master after you disappeared? That person was indeed powerful." As soon as Zhang Xiu spoke, he saw through Zhang Xiu's purpose. Zhang Xiu said with a smile, I'm just curious. I just want to be sure. You all think that Sect Master Jiang is dead, but why do you still believe that I'm Jiang Luoxia? No matter how powerful he was, he couldn't have imagined that Zhang Xiu had lost a portion of his memories. The current him didn't know what had happened to him at all. He said, about 60 years ago, you left the sect, saying that you were going to Tsong province to do something. At that time, you wanted to become an immortal emperor just like Ji Daozong. No, you were even crazier. Ji Daozong had only cultivated the heavenly mirror for a dozen years, but you had already cultivated for 700 years. For someone who had never encountered a bottleneck in cultivation, you couldn't accept that your cultivation was restricted and couldn't move an inch. Perhaps you heard that Tsong province had a method and hurried there. At that time, everyone thought that it had something to do with the heavenly mirror. Zhang Xiu tried his best to recall what had happened. Zhang Xiu didn't dare to fully believe this person's words. After all, this person's identity was unknown and he had a motive. However, he vaguely felt that he had indeed gone to Tsong Prefecture. However, a very vague image of Tsong Prefecture flashed through his mind. He had indeed gone to Tsong State. Zhang Xiu asked, and then? Then? He shook his head and said, then you went missing for more than 40 years and never returned to the sect. For immortal cultivators, 40 years isn't a long time. Nobody put it in their hearts. You're not a sect master who works hard for the country, but a cultivation maniac. What you want more is to break through and become an immortal emperor. But what everyone didn't expect was that the news of your death in Song province came. Zhang Xiu's expression didn't change in the slightest. He couldn't reveal any flaws. The more critical the situation was, the more he had to remain calm. To survive in the immortal martial continent, being calm was the most important thing. When you acted, you had to act like a thunderbolt. If you didn't act, or if you didn't have the ability to act, you had to endure. When Zhang Xiu revealed his talent, his master thought that he had a chance to chase after the sect master's strength. He had warned him that he had to remain calm and forget who he was and what he wanted. Since he didn't panic and wasn't afraid, he had to put his heart under his feet. Only then could he walk further and higher. You don't want to know the details? Zhang Xiu said, I'm very curious as to how Sect Master Zhang died and who killed him. After all, there aren't many people who can kill an expert like him. That person said, the matter is indeed very strange. After Sect Master Zhang disappeared for 40 years, Ji Daozong suddenly came back and said that he wanted to marry the daughter of the Tai Hua sect's sect master. You have to know that under Sect Master Zhang's leadership, our Chenqing school and the Tai Hua sect have always been on bad terms. How could two tigers on the same mountain get along peacefully? He wanted to marry the daughter of the Tai Hua sect's sect master. At that time, all the elders in the sect objected, saying that they wanted to wait for the sect master to come back and make a decision. Just as this matter was pending, news came from outside saying that you had died. The entire sect was shocked, and many people didn't dare to believe it. However, all of your trusted followers were also killed. Some of their corpses were also brought back. Zhang Xiu's face became gloomy. His disciples were all gone. He didn't see any of them at the successor battle. His people seemed to have all disappeared out of thin air. And Jian Yi, who he had contacted on Earth, also disappeared without a trace. He didn't know what time it was here, whether it was just after he disappeared or many years later. But he couldn't ask the person in front of him about these things. It was too dangerous. Although Ji Daozong gave him the identity of Jiang Luoxia, he must not admit it. If he didn't admit it, there was still a glimmer of hope. If he admitted it, Ji Daozong would definitely not let him live. He could feel that what happened before he disappeared was related to Ji Daozong, Tai Hua sect, and even his old friend in Song State. Zhang Xiu asked, then what about Sect Master Zhang? Where is his corpse? That person said, at that time, we couldn't find Sect Master Zhang's corpse, but after the news came, Ji Daozong couldn't wait to marry a disciple of Tai Hua sect and rope in some elders. Some people can't wait to succeed the position of sect master, but there are still a large number of people who oppose. Because Sect Master's corpse hasn't been found, there is no way to confirm that Sect Master Jiang is dead. Jiang Xiu snorted coldly in his heart. Of course they couldn't find him. At this time he should be on Earth. And then, we didn't see Sect Master Jiang's corpse. Did the law enforcement elder, Q-Sword elder, and the others all agree? Of course they didn't agree, but, at this time, the sky turned white. They had agreed to meet at dawn, but it wasn't long. Time passed as they talked. There was no time. If they continued to talk, the two of them might be seen by people who got up early. It's going to be dawn. Go back and think about what I said. Ji Daozong won't let you go, so the best way is to let him die. Only if he dies can all our problems be solved. If he doesn't die, Qianqing School will be destroyed, and Sect Master Jiang won't live for long. I dare say that the day we move the sect will be the day you die. Maybe they will use your life as a sacrifice. Jiang Xiu shook his head and said, I've said many times, I'm not Jiang Luoxia. You've got it wrong. That person didn't say anything else. Because it was dawn, his night movement technique would be broken, and Jiang Xiu might see his true face. He should be very afraid of this matter. What if Jiang Xiu sold him to Ji Daozong? He couldn't take this risk. See you tomorrow at the same time and place. After saying that, he flew away. The movement technique of an immortal king was shockingly fast. In a flash, he disappeared from Jiang Xiu's sight. Jiang Xiu didn't stop. He turned around and flew back to his residence. He also wanted to return to his residence before the first batch of disciples woke up. If he was seen by others, he would be in trouble. But as he flew, he thought about why he went to the Tsong Prefecture, what he encountered in the Tsong Prefecture, and who was it that attacked him. He didn't know if that person knew what happened at that time. As for asking Jiang Xiu to find someone to kill Ji Daozong, he didn't think about it at all. He indeed had many friends who were immortal kings. This was because he was very warlike, but it couldn't be said that he was warlike. He hoped to break through to the immortal king realm, so he found many people to spar with. He wanted to improve his cultivation level, so he got to know a few immortal kings. Some became enemies, while some became friends. Now that people outside thought that Jiang Luoxia was dead, if he went to find them with his identity, they might not believe him. Even if they believed him, they might not help him. As the saying goes, tea cools down when people leave. Jiang Xiu didn't want to test the humanity of those old friends, and he didn't want to disappoint himself again. With his current cultivation and the fact that he had lost the position of sect master, he was no longer qualified to talk to those people. It wasn't that he looked down on his friends, but that he had lost confidence in human nature. Cheng Lingren's matter was a big blow to him. Chapter 559. There was a knock on the door. Zhao Rong heard movement in Jiang Xiu's room and thought that Jiang Xiu had woken up. Jiang Xiu said, "Come in." Zhao Rong brought in a cup of spirit tea and said, "Young master woke up earlier than usual today. Have a cup first. Breakfast will be ready soon. Xiao Yu and Xinya are already preparing it." Jiang Xiu nodded slightly. On the long table in front of him, there were 2 small bottles. They contained the resources he collected last night. He hesitated and wanted to cultivate, but these were troubled times and he was using Jiang Luoxia's identity. There was no telling who would come looking for him later. This feeling was very uncomfortable. It was like a playful student who wanted to play a game, but his parents had to go home immediately. The bottle on the left contained the true netherworld water and was sealed. The bottle on the right was open, and it contained the blood of the earth dragon fire snake. Speaking of snake blood, Jiang Xiu thought of his own life-bound divine artifact. His life-bound divine artifact was made from the longevity stone talisman, and it was restrained by Yi Bing's snake blood. He was a little worried that the earth dragon fire snake's blood would restrain his longevity stone talisman, just like Yi Bing's snake blood. Most stones that were stained with snake blood would deteriorate. It was a little risky. Thinking of this, Jiang Xiu took out a thin needle and dipped it in a little snake blood. Then, he fused it into the spirit tea. Just by inserting the needle into the tea, a thick smoke rose and the tea instantly boiled. To think that there would be such a huge reaction when the snake blood came into contact with the spirit tea. Of course, normal heat would not be able to harm Jiang Xiu's divine body at all. His divine body was not lacking in that aspect, but this natal divine tool had an extremely fatal flaw. No matter how much his cultivation increased, Yi Bing's blood would always be his nemesis. He really didn't want the blood of all spirit snakes to restrain the longevity stone talisman. If that was the case, he, Jiang Luoxia, would have an extra door of life. Now that things had come to this, he couldn't go back anymore. He had already cultivated to the heavenly deity level, so even if he could preserve his little life, he had to start from the very basics again. The churning teacup was like boiling water, and at the same time, it was filled with a pungent smell of blood. Jiang Xiu frowned, raised the teacup, and drank it in one gulp. Shangguan Zhao Rong saw this and also frowned. She felt that the tea was hot just by looking at it. If she drank it, she would be scalded half to death. She didn't even know if it was poisonous. Young master. In the next moment, Jiang Xiu's expression changed drastically. His handsome face turned a strange dark red, alternating between red and white, and his expression was one of pain. Jiang Xiu covered his face with his hands in pain, and his whole body trembled. Then he saw that Jiang Xiu's 7 orifices began to bleed, especially the blood that kept coming out of his mouth. It was really scary. Young master, what's wrong?" When she shouted, Li Chong and the other girls heard the noise and rushed over. When they saw this, they were all in a mess and didn't know what to do for a moment. "Quick, go and invite Supreme Sparrow Elder." These servants also firmly believed that Jiang Xiu was Jiang Luoxia. The former sect master's body was in a condition, so of course, he was qualified to find the chief medical elder. "No need." Jiang Xiu pinched his face hard. The blood of the earth dragon fire snake restrained Jiang Xiu even more fiercely than Yi Bing's blood. Yi Bing was just a small demon god at that time, and the earth dragon fire snake was an extremely rare spirit snake of the dragon species. According to legend, this spirit snake had the bloodline of the ancient snake god. However, the amount was always small. If it was more, it might really take Jiang Xiu's life. Slowly, the churning blood calmed down, and he eased from the severe pain. At this moment, it was really like being skinned. His whole body was covered in cold sweat, and his face and clothes were all covered in blood. It's all right. Prepare hot blood for me, I want to take a bath." There was a bathroom in his courtyard. Although the pool inside was not as big as a swimming pool, it was definitely more spacious than the bathrooms of ancient emperors. Jiang Xiu soaked himself in it, and slowly let the heat of the snake blood in his body spread out. Bathing was such a personal thing, so of course, only Shangguan Zhao Rong, his personal maid, could do it. She sprinkled some flower petals in it, and then lit an incense in Jiang Xiu's direction. Finally, she came to Jiang Xiu's side and massaged his temples. She said worriedly, "Young master is really all right, why don't we ask Supreme Sparrow Elder to take a look?" Of course, Jiang Xiu would not ask Supreme Sparrow. Wouldn't that be telling Supreme Sparrow that he was restrained by the spirit snake's blood? He would rather endure the pain than expose his weakness to others. "No need." Jiang Xiu said, "Don't tell anyone about this." "Oh." Shangguan Zhao Rong nodded her head, understanding Jiang Xiu's worries. "But is young master really okay? Zhao Rong has also read some medical books. Why don't I prescribe some medicine for young master?" Jiang Xiu was surprised. "You've read medical books?" Shangguan Zhao Rong said, "When I was a female official in the Jialan Imperial Palace, the place where Zhao Rong worked was next to the Imperial Hospital. When I had nothing to do, I would go there to play. An imperial doctor saw that I was obedient, so he taught me to read medical books. Afterwards, I learned medicine from that imperial doctor." Since she studied medicine, it was very likely that she knew about the earth dragon fire snake's blood. "Young master." Although the earth dragon fire snake's heat is shocking, it is a great supplement for cultivators. Drinking it is very beneficial to the body, and it is also very helpful for cultivation. Why do you? Jiang Xiu's eyes shone with an ominous light, but it was a pity that Shangguan Zhao Rong was standing behind Jiang Xiu and could not see his eyes. She was completely unaware of it. Sir, you're a divine cultivator, but I've never seen your natal artifact. This might have something to do with your natal artifact. In Western Zhou, there's a strange kind of stone. It's said that it was transformed from a giant in ancient times. At that time, the giant collapsed and turned into countless stones. Because the giant was a divine cultivator, his body was covered with talismans. Therefore, the stones scattered between heaven and earth were all written with talismans. Each stone had its own unique meaning, so it was named the Heavenly Questioning Stone Talisman. This Heaven Questioning Stone Talisman is not afraid of anything except the spirit snake's blood. Jiang Xiu slowly fell into a trance. Could it be that the stone that Xie Ting's clan had was the Heaven Questioning Stone Talisman? But Western Zhou was in the immortal martial continent, so how did Xie Ting obtain the Heaven Questioning Stone Talisman? Could it be that the embryo of young master's natal artifact was refined from the Heaven Questioning Stone Talisman? Shangguan Zhao Rong's knowledge and experience far exceeded Jiang Xiu's expectations. However, her act of thinking that she was clever also angered Jiang Xiu. He definitely would not allow a young girl who knew his weakness to live. It was better to say that she was stupid than smart. If she was really smart, then she should have just let this matter rot in her stomach. If I'm not wrong, then Zhao Rong can take medicine to nurse young master's body back to health. Jiang Xiu did not care about the small injuries on his body. After a pause, Shangguan Zhao Rong's voice became very soft. Zhao Rong knows what young master is thinking. Zhao Rong's life is young master's. If young master wants it, you can take it at any time. However, please let Zhao Rong nurse young master's body back to health before taking action. Jiang Xiu's eyes that were filled with killing intent gradually softened. It can be considered that Zhao Rong has done something for young master. Jiang Xiu said, "You're dancing on the edge of a knife." Shangguan Zhao Rong shook her head and said, "Zhao Rong is not. Zhao Rong just doesn't want young master to suffer even the slightest bit. Being able to serve young master is Zhao Rong's good fortune." Jiang Xiu said, "Does Western Zhou have many of these heaven questioning stones?" Shangguan Zhao Rong said, "I'm not sure, the books only mentioned it." Zhao Rong has never seen the Heaven's Inquisition stone, but from the pictures in the books, the mountains were filled with that kind of stone. Each stone had strange runes on it. From ancient times until now, there shouldn't be many left. Western Zhou's imperial palace must have some. The people there view it as a sacred object. Jiang Xiu used a wet towel to cover his face. It seemed that he did not want to continue talking with Shangguan Zhao Rong. Shangguan Zhao Rong moved her red lips but did not speak again. Instead, she walked away with light steps. Western Zhou? The immortal martial continent was really too big. Just Qing province alone had countless dynasties and countries. He had only seen Western Zhou in the records of Yi province and had never been there. Although Shangguan Zhao Rong exposed him, she also let him know what the longevity stone talisman was. A giant stone deity had fallen. Was there such a person in ancient times? Jiang Xiu's mind was reminded of a stone pillar that reached the heavens. That was the only description of a stone deity in ancient times. It seemed to be called God Buzhou. Its body was like a pillar with a snake coiled around it. Chapter 560. The Heaven's Inquisition pillar had a serpent's body coiled around it. This was the portrait of God Buzhou, a supreme god. How did he fall back then? Even now, it was still a mystery. According to the immortal martial strange god's record, it was due to the collapse of the world. But of course, this was only a legend passed down from generation to generation. However, Jiang Xiu was able to obtain the world's laws from the Heaven's Inquisition stone talisman. This made the legend of the Heaven's Inquisition stone talisman somewhat credible. However, He was almost certain that the longevity stone talisman was the Heaven's Inquisition stone talisman. The mystery of why his natal artifact was restrained by the snake's blood was also solved. The formation of the god of Buzhou's stone and snake's body contained a kind of heavenly law. It was also because of this that the snake's blood restrained the Heaven's Inquisition pillar. After soaking in the water for more than an hour, the hot blood in his body slowly calmed down. However, the snake's blood had caused a certain amount of damage to his blood vessels and blood. He needed to take medicine to nourish it. If he relied on himself to recover, there might be repercussions. At noon that day, Shangguan Zhao Rong brewed medicine for Zhang Xiu. Zhang Xiu was indeed uncomfortable. After drinking it, he felt his body relax a lot. At such a young age, she had such medical attainments. Shangguan Zhao Rong's talent in this area was not bad. After taking a nap in the afternoon, it was almost night when he woke up. Zhang Xiu lit a candle and flipped through a book, waiting for the arrival of dawn. Last night, that person only spoke half of the story. Zhang Xiu naturally had to listen to the rest, especially how he lost his position as the sect master. However, the truth was always unexpected. When Zhang Xiu arrived on time that night, that person was already there. However, his mood did not seem too good. Sect Master Zhang is here. He seemed to be certain that Zhang Xiu was Zhang Luoxia. That's right. If it wasn't Zhang Luoxia, why would Zhang Xiu keep coming? Zhang Xiu said, after listening to half of the story yesterday, I feel like something is hanging in my heart. He said, the story is not complete because no one really knows the truth. After the news of your death spread, the Ji Dao sect took the opportunity to expand, but all the elders threatened to wait until 60 years later. The Ji Dao sect had no choice but to agree. However, not long after, 3 of your old friends came to the sect. They unanimously confirmed that you were dead. They saw it with their own eyes. Zhang Xiu asked, which 3? Yan Longyue, the corpse god Taoist, and Hua Luiying, who is the most beautiful and the most famous in the world. These 3 are all immortal kings, and they are good friends with you. At this point, everyone is completely convinced. A cold light flashed in Zhang Xiu's eyes. Once again, he felt the pain of being betrayed. So the sect is certain that Zhang Luoxia is dead? He shook his head and said, of course not. Although these people are famous and their words carry enormous weight, our Chenqing school will never admit it unless we see a corpse. If they are alive, I want to see them. If they are dead, I want to see their corpses. Zhang Xiu didn't understand. If that's the case, then how, that person said, but your corpse really did appear. What? Zhang Xiu was incomparably shocked. He said, your corpse was found and brought back to the sect. I, as well as many of the sect's elders, saw it with our own eyes. There is no doubt that it is you. At this point, he was also very surprised. A person he had seen dead with his own eyes had appeared in front of him with a completely different appearance. No, that's impossible. Zhang Xiu looked calm on the surface, but huge waves surged in his heart. He didn't believe it. There must be a problem somewhere. If the corpse was fake, it couldn't be hidden from so many immortal kings. But if it was real, it was even more impossible that he was still alive in this world. There must be a problem somewhere. At this point, we no longer have a reason to deny your death. At that time, the reputation of the Ji Dao sect was the highest. Of course, there were many things that happened during this period. The Ji Dao sect borrowed the power of the Tai Hua sect and finally ascended to the position of sect master. He had expected most of the things, but the only thing he couldn't figure out was why his corpse would appear. This was really strange. Could it be that he was really dead? That didn't make sense. Zhang Xiu said, since you all saw Zhang Luoxia's corpse, why do you still believe that I am Zhang Luoxia? That person said, at that time, we even held a grand burial ceremony for you, and your corpse was buried in the immortal burial mountain. We saw all of this with our own eyes, but now, the tomb is empty. Sect Master Zhang is now standing in front of us, alive and well. Shouldn't you explain what is going on? Zhang Xiu thought to himself, I want to know what is going on. He said, the explanation is that I am not Zhang Luoxia at all. Is Sect Master Zhang really not willing to help? You should know that the Ji Dao sect will never let you go. Helping me is helping yourself. He pointed to the immortal burial mountain in the distance. Don't forget that your master and your fellow disciples are buried there. Once the Qianqing school moves away, that place will definitely become a barren land that will be ravaged by birds and beasts. Do you have the heart? Zhang Xiu said, I don't want the Qianqing school to move away, but there is nothing I can do. After speaking, Zhang Xiu turned and left, a trace of pain flashing through his eyes. If he had the ability, he would never have let such a thing happen. Thinking of the faces of his master and fellow disciples, his heart felt like it was being ruthlessly whipped. He was ashamed to face his master and the ancestors of the Qianqing school. Think about it carefully. If you change your mind, come here at the same time. Spirit Void Master has already found the dragon vein. Tomorrow, all of our elders will leave the sect. None of them will be left behind. They will all go to the dragon vein to investigate. It will take at most 2 months to go back and forth. In other words, there are only 2 months left. We don't have much time. There was some urgency in his voice. Even if Zhang Xiu agreed to look for them, 2 months was a very short time. However, Zhang Xiu turned a deaf ear to him. All the elders had left the sect. This was something that had never happened before. That meant that the sect was completely defenseless. It seemed that the Ji Dao sect had made up their mind to move. The next day, as that person said, the Ji Dao sect led all the elders of the sect to the dragon vein. The matters of the sect were temporarily entrusted to the eldest disciple of the Ji Dao sect, Shan Kuan. Sect Master Zhang. A disciple from the main peak came to the door. The head disciple invites you. Zhang Xiu said, call me senior brother Zhang. The disciple said, I don't dare. Do you know why the head disciple is looking for me? The disciple said, you'll know when you get there. When Zhang Xiu arrived, Shan Kuan was reviewing the memorials. Under the rule of the Qianqing school, all the major dynasties, countries, and sects would encounter problems that they couldn't solve themselves. Then, they would ask the Qianqing school to help them. Or, if there was a conflict between them, they would ask the Qianqing school to make a decision. The emperor of a country was busy every day. Of course, the head of the Qianqing school had endless things to do. However, the Ji Dao sect was also someone who chased after the immortal emperor, so these trivial matters were left to his eldest disciple. Zhang Luoxia's blood was taken by Shan Kuan. Of course, he also knew that Zhang Xiu wasn't Zhang Luoxia. Therefore, he wasn't so polite. Sect Master Zhang, please sit. Zhang Xiu also didn't stand on ceremony and sat down. This time, I invited Sect Master Zhang to come because of a difficult matter. Gu Quo sect is under pressure from foreign tribes at the border. They want our Qianqing school to send people to solve it. I thought about it and only Sect Master Zhang is suitable. I also want to ask Sect Master Zhang to make a trip. Zhang Xiu smiled and said, of course, this is my duty. However, he had a bad premonition in his heart. Just like that person said, the Ji Dao sect wouldn't let him live. Whether he was the real Zhang Luoxia or the fake Zhang Luoxia, this was probably a trap. A trap that would take his life. However, even though he knew it was a trap, Zhang Xiu had no reason to refuse. Well, then I'll have to trouble Sect Master Zhang. The matter over there is urgent. Please leave immediately. Zhang Xiu said, just me? When going out to carry out a mission, they usually didn't go alone. Yes, just you. The sect elders aren't here. It's better for the sect members to go out less. If it wasn't for the urgent matter over there, I wouldn't have asked Sect Master Zhang to go. Zhang Xiu smiled faintly and said, then I'll go. In his heart, he was thinking about who they would send to kill him. If they let him out of the sect, wouldn't they be afraid that he would leave? He returned to the courtyard and packed up his important things. If it was as he expected, he He could only choose to go far away and wait for his strength to recover before returning to Qianqing school. Chapter 561. When he was still a successor disciple, Jiang Xiu often went out with his fellow disciples to carry out missions. He had always done things simply, directly, and violently. This trip seemed to have returned to the past, but things had changed, and he had become a loner. In order to avoid trouble on the way, Jiang Xiu directly used the sect's flying boat. Now the whole sect thought that he was the former sect master, and ordinary disciples would definitely not be able to use it. But since Jiang Xiu asked, of course, they would not refuse. Most disciples would only use the flying boat when they went out. Under normal circumstances, they would drive the flying sword by themselves. But Jiang Xiu was not a sword immortal, and he did not want to waste the effort, so he asked for a small flying boat. He walked through the misty sky alone. Guchu sect was located in the southeast of Qingzhou. Jiang Xiu had been there before, carrying out a mission with senior brother Yingjie. It was already at the edge of Qianqing school's influence, bordering Taihua sect. At that time, when Shan Kuan mentioned Guchu sect, Jiang Xiu had already felt that the Ji Daoist sect would not let him live, but after all, he was carrying the name of Jiang Luoxia. If he killed him, he would bear the crime of killing the former sect master. He would not be so stupid. The Taihua sect was right next to them. Jiang Luoxia had humiliated the Taihua sect in the True Disciples battle. Even without this incident, Jiang Luoxia still owed the Taihua sect a huge debt of blood. Back then, he had slaughtered his way into the Taihua sect and killed countless people. He had thoroughly humiliated the Taihua sect and left in the end. No matter how you looked at it, as long as he went there, he would be in big trouble. He now knew the vicious intentions of the Ji Daoist sect. As long as he carried the name of Jiang Luoxia out of the Qianqing school, his former friends might not help him, but his enemies would definitely come to him for revenge. A few days later, Jiang Xiu arrived at Guchu sect. This was originally a sect, but with the changes of time, the sect gradually became a country. This was the characteristic of small sections. Because of personal selfish desires, they eventually hoped to become their own private property. Now, they all called themselves Gu Chu country, and the sect master had become the emperor. However, the Qianqing school's records still called this place Gu Chu country. When the Shangxian of Qianqing school arrived, Emperor Gu Qiuo had to personally welcome her. However, Jiang Xiu was nowhere to be seen. Although the palace was bustling, it was not because of Jiang Xiu's arrival. The person who came to greet Jiang Xiu was just a palace official. When he saw Jiang Xiu, he only bowed slightly and said, "Greetings, Shangxian." Jiang Xiu could hear the "you" in the palace. "Where is Emperor Gu Qiuo?" The officer replied, replying to the exalted immortal, "His Majesty is currently receiving a distinguished guest." Jiang Xiu frowned. A disciple of the Celestial Motion sect was an immortal emissary. A mere little emperor dared to be so rude. To the Gu Chu sect, was there a more distinguished guest than the Celestial Motion sect's immortal emissary? The officer said, "Shangxian, you've come all the way from Qianqing school. It must have been a tiring journey. Please follow me. I've already prepared a bedroom for you. Please rest for a while and wait for His Majesty to summon you. He was here to help." Was this the attitude of Emperor Gu Qiuo? Jiang Xiu said, "Emperor Gu Qiuo, how dare you put on airs?" His feet did not move at all. Jiang Xiu was not an easy person to deal with. Not just anyone could put on airs in front of him. The officer's face revealed an awkward expression. He said, "Shangxian, our emperor is indeed receiving a guest. Please understand. Don't make things difficult for us servants." Her words made Jiang Xiu seem like he was not magnanimous. Jiang Xiu said, "If that's the case, then I won't disturb you. If you have anything to say, go and tell Taixing Zong." After speaking, Jiang Xiu turned to leave. He did not want to get involved in this matter. Seeing that Jiang Xiu was about to leave, the officer did not stop him. He sneered and said, "Qianqing school can't survive in Qingzhou anymore. They're about to move. How dare they put on airs in my Guchu sect? Zhang Xiu was about to fly onto the flying boat hanging in the sky when he heard this. He stopped and turned around. A fierce light flashed in his eyes. What did you say? Say it again if you dare. The officer's face revealed fear. Don't mess around. This is the Guchu Palace, not your Tianqing school. You dare to humiliate Tianqing school? Although Zhang Xiu was no longer the leader of Tianqing school, his feelings for the Tianqing school had not diminished. The school had given him a second chance at life and brought him endless glory. He would never allow anyone to humiliate Tianqing school. Seeing the fierce light in his eyes, the officer said in fear, "Guards, guards!" The Guchu Palace was an important place. With his shout, the guards all gathered around. The leader was a general in armor. He asked, "Chief, what happened?" The officer pointed at Zhang Xiu and said, "Commander Qi, this person wants to harm me." Hearing this, the guards all drew their swords. Commander Qi was shocked. He looked at Zhang Xiu and asked, "Who are you? How dare you sneak into the sect?" Zhang Xiu sneered. Zhang Xiu of Tianqing School. The words Tianqing School should have been intimidating, but Commander Qi was calm. Even if you are a disciple of Tianqing School, you can't behave atrociously in the Guchu Palace. Zhang Xiu took a step forward. Do you want to die? Tianqing School was not intimidating, but every disciple of Tianqing School was powerful, especially those who came to deal with the affairs of the imperial sect. They were all true disciples. Everyone became nervous. In the direction of the main hall, a group of people seemed to have noticed the situation here. They walked over and shouted, "Stop!" When they saw who it was, all the guards present knelt down. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Emperor Guchu? Zhang Xiu's gaze swept over. It was a person who looked very young. He was dressed in luxurious golden clothes and had a large entourage behind him. Zhang Xiu's eyes gradually turned cold. If these servants didn't have the secret permission of their master, they wouldn't dare to be impudent to Zhang Xiu. "You are a disciple of Tianqing School." Zhang Xiu said coldly, "Yes, I am. I am under orders from Tianqing School to come to Guchu to help you. Is this how you welcome the Tianqing School's immortals?" Emperor Guchu smiled and said, "So it's the immortals from Tianqing School. My apologies. I happen to have an important guest here." Emperor Guchu also showed some arrogance and even anger. Every year, they had to pay tribute to Tianqing School. After the succession of the Ji Daozong, they kept increasing their demands for the sake of their dream of becoming an immortal emperor, which made all the major forces dissatisfied. However, today's attitude was not caused by dissatisfaction. It was because Tianqing School was about to move, and they were about to break away from Tianqing School's control. Emperor Guchu's attitude is like this? If someone is more important than Tianqing School, then why did you write a letter for Tianqing School to help? Emperor Guchu smiled and said, "Tianqing School received my resources, so of course they have to do something for Guchu. This is a matter of course. Could it be that Tianqing School doesn't want to do something after receiving my resources?" A voice came from the side, "Even if Tianqing School wants to do something, I'm afraid they don't have the ability." This voice was very abrupt and ear-piercing. Everyone looked over and saw a middle-aged man with two young people, 2 men and 1 woman. The group of 4 people walked over unhurriedly. Zhang Xiu saw the familiar symbol of Taihua sect on them. So Emperor Guchu's so-called important guest is a disciple of Taihua sect. Emperor Guchu smiled and said, "Let me introduce you. This is Zhang Tianqi of Taihua sect, Mr. Zhang. These 3 are his junior brothers and sisters." Zhang Tianqi didn't wait for Emperor Guchu to finish and reached out to stop him. It was as if there was no need to introduce them to Zhang Xiu. Emperor Guchu didn't dare to be presumptuous in front of him. Zhang Xiu looked at the group of people coldly and asked, "Are you from Tianqing School?" Zhang Xiu was surprised. It seemed that the person in front of him didn't know who he was. Tianqing School's Zhang Xiu. Zhang Tianqi shook his head and said, I've never heard of a nobody. It seems that Tianqing school has really declined. Not only did they have to move their sect, but even the disciples they sent are so weak. He's actually a god elementalist. What a joke. Zhang Xiu looked at the person in front of him coldly. I just heard that someone wanted to fight in the Guchu Palace. I'm very interested to know how capable a god elementalist from Tianqing school is. Emperor Guzhua continued, Commander Qi, I think he was talking to you. You should experience this Tianqing schools. Shangxian. Commander Qi said, Yes. Exalted Immortal, His Majesty has spoken. Please. Chapter 562. Zhang Xiu stared coldly at the group of people in front of him. Your emperor has spoken? Do you think he can order me around? Do you want me to repeat who I am? In my eyes, your emperor is nothing more than a dog raised by the Heaven Motion sect. Everyone in Gu Qiuo was furious. If this was in the past, everyone in Gu Qiuo wouldn't have dared to be so presumptuous in front of Zhang Xiu. However, the situation was different now. Tianqing school was going to move, and Gu Qiuo no longer had to look up to Tianqing school. Moreover, there were disciples of Taihua sect standing next to them. How awe-inspiring! Zhang Tianqi sneered disdainfully and shook his head. Do you really think you are Zhang Luoxia? Zhang Luoxia? This name was too famous. Although he had disappeared for decades, and news of his death had spread more than 10 years ago, Tianqing school had reported that he was still alive. The person in front of them was Zhang Luoxia? Everyone present was so scared that they stepped back. Why did Tianqing school send such a powerful person here? He had offended Zhang Luoxia just now. Zhang Xiu's eyes were cold. From this person's words, it could be seen that he actually knew who Zhang Xiu was. He was the famous Zhang Luoxia in Tianqing school, but this person obviously didn't believe it. He was so sure that Zhang Xiu wasn't Zhang Luoxia because he didn't believe the rumors. After all, the Ji Daoist sect had done a blood test. Unless he knew that there was something fishy about the blood test. His source of information, if nothing unexpected happened, should be from Madame Ji. It seemed that Madame Ji already knew the truth, and so did everyone in the Taihua sect. Zhang Xiu said, I never said that I was Zhang Luoxia. I'm just a disciple of Tianqing school, and I'm not someone you can mess with. What arrogance! Seeing that Zhang Tianqi was also humiliated, Emperor Guzhua was completely furious. At this time, he had to show his stance. Then fight with my guard commander. If you can't even beat my guard commander, what ability do you have to help Guzhua? Zhang Xiu said, He's not worthy. Even if Emperor Guzhua did it himself, Zhang Xiu didn't think he was qualified, let alone his bodyguard commander. If he did it, it would be a disgrace to the identity of a student of Tianqing school. Ha ha ha. Emperor Guzhua laughed out loud. I think you don't dare. You're just a divine elementalist. How dare you come to Guzhua to deal with the national affairs of tens of millions of people? Do you think Tianqing school is still the same as before? Do you think showing your signboard will work? Stop dreaming. If Tianqing school no longer has the heart to operate here, then let others take over. Zhang Xiu said, Let others take over. Are you talking about Taihua sect? Emperor Guzhua said, Yes. Since Tianqing school is leaving, then Guzhua will naturally not follow. Go back and tell the sect master that Guzhua will no longer give offerings to Tianqing school. Instead, we will give offerings to Taihua sect. Zhang Xiu's expression didn't change. Do you know the consequences of doing this? Anyone who betrayed or wanted to leave Tianqing school would never have a good ending. Many dynasties that had existed for tens of thousands of years collapsed overnight. Consequences? Emperor Guzhua said, You can talk about consequences if you can beat my guard commander. Zhang Xiu said, If I make a move, your Guzhua royal family will disappear from this world. You'd better think it over. Ha ha ha. Emperor Guzhua laughed again. Your Excellency is really arrogant. Immortal Zhang is here, and you dare to boast here. It's funny that you can't even deal with a small guard commander. How dare you talk nonsense? Why don't you make a move? Commander Qi said, as a disciple of Qianqing School, you are as timid as a mouse. In my opinion, Qianqing School is nothing more than trash. Zhang Xiu's eyebrows jumped. Are you looking for death? Commander Qi shook his head. No, I'm not looking for death. I'm looking for death. When such arrogant words were spoken, everyone present roared with laughter. Looking for death. Looking for death. The guards on the side all clamored. The officer looked at Zhang Xiu with contempt. He was sure that Zhang Xiu wouldn't dare to make a move. This was Gutsua, and his strength wasn't weak. Now that there were 4 immortals of Taihua sect here, he would only be asking for humiliation. For the first time, a faint smile appeared on Zhang Xiu's cold face. Seeking death. Then I'll fulfill your wish. Commander Qi had been waiting impatiently for a long time, and the crowd gradually retreated. It seems that I haven't killed anyone in a long time. Now, any random cat or dog dares to jump out. Before Zhang Xiu could finish his sentence, he saw that although Commander Qi was wearing armor, he wasn't clumsy at all. Instead, he was extremely fast. With a stomp of his feet, the violent recoil actually pulled out a groove that was more than 10 meters away from the ground behind him. His entire body had already shot out. So fast. Good blade. The guards on the scene were all shocked. For them, it was a luxury to see Commander Qi's full strength. They were all guessing the power of Commander Qi's attack, but when he pulled out his blade, they realized how terrifying it was. At this moment, the blade was shining brightly. Seeing this power, everyone paled. Even the disciples of Taihua sect were shocked. This was the commander of the palace guards, the head of the bodyguards of Emperor Gutsua. He was also a top master in Gutsua. Such a powerful blade, I'm afraid that person can't even take it. Everyone's eyes were focused on Zhang Xiu. At this moment, the whole palace seemed to be illuminated by the blade light. Blade Realm. There were 3 major realms in blade cultivation. The first realm was Blade Intent, the second realm was Blade Force, and the third realm was Blade Realm. Once used, the blade Qi would be everywhere, covering an entire area. It was obvious that its power had reached the realm of perfection. In Taihua sect and Qianqing School, those who could reach the realm of Blade Realm were considered the top true disciples. If their realms were higher, it would be even more amazing. This person was indeed worthy of being the #1 bodyguard of the emperor. The male disciple of Taihua sect smiled. He's dead. Even the first senior brother wouldn't dare to take it. But in the next moment, his smile froze on his face. Under the incredulous gazes of the crowd, Zhang Xiu leisurely took a step forward. After that, he slapped down with his bare palm. This palm strike didn't seem to be some kind of immortal martial palm technique. It was more like a father slapping his son when he was bored on a rainy day. There was no pattern to it, it was just a slap. However, this slap seemed to carry the weight of an entire world with it. Oh no! Zhang Tianqi and the others' faces changed. It was too late to save him. Zhang Xiu's palm carried the power of the world's law. The Blade Realm enveloped his world. How could a region compare to a world? In Zhang Xiu's world, many forces would lose their original function. Unfortunately, the region was one of them. It was originally a kind of space law, but it was immediately destroyed and disappeared. The power of the world's law was the most fundamental reason why Zhang Xiu didn't want to give up his life artifact. It was too heaven-defying. He felt that it was worth it to have such a weakness. The hand in the blade light was like an iron hand. The white blade light collapsed upon contact. Along the way, there were cracking sounds, and all the blade energy in the air collapsed. Crack! A crisp sound rang out as the long saber in Commander Qi's hand shattered. He pressed his palm against Commander Qi's chest, and as his body rumbled, power seeped out of his body and into the ground. The cracks on the ground extended in all directions like a spider web. Commander Chi's eyes gradually lost their light. His body seemed to have lost its bones, and he fell to the ground. You want to die? Then I'll fulfill your wish. Zhang Xiu leisurely retracted his hand, his eyes cold. Just now, they had provoked him in every possible way, but he didn't say anything. This gave everyone the impression that the Qianqing school's prestige was not there, and that he was weak and easy to bully. However, they didn't expect that such a powerful blade realm would be defeated by his palm. Under such a strong contrast, they deeply understood the strength of the Qianqing school's disciples. This person was so terrifying. Commander Qi! Commander Qi! The guards on the side immediately went to check on him, but they saw that Commander Qi's pupils were dilated, and he was vomiting blood. He was no longer breathing. He was dead. Dead. Everyone's expression changed drastically. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.